talked to anybody, she just wanted mom.
sign it. Be done.
What's wrong?
Call the Tuesday, April 5th, 2022 meeting of the East Bay Charter Township Planning Commission to order. I don't see it on our agenda, but, oh yeah, here it is. I'm reading it the wrong part. We'll do a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Leslie, if you could do the roll call, please.
Oh, certainly. Gonzalez.
Here.
Leonard.
Here.
Nimitz.
Here.
Ooh, I almost said the wrong name. Walters.
Present.
Edley.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Syke.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. We have in front of you the agenda for this evening. If there are any conflicts of interest, please make those aware of to the Planning Commission. Also for consideration is the approval of the agenda.
Can we just amend the agenda to have a little break at 9, between 9C and D, like 10 minutes, if it gets long?
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay. Also move to approve the amended agenda of Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. Support.
Okay, we have a motion to, and support to amend the agenda as mentioned. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next on the agenda is approval of the March 24th special meeting minutes. Would you have those on your desk? Any review or comments on those?
Yeah, I got one. On page 3 of 4, where we talk about boat use, it says boat use was discussed. It says campers can bring a boat, and if a participant, my understanding is they have to be enrolled in a boating class to bring a boat.
Where are you reading
Right,
Yeah, okay.
right in the middle.
now? What was discussed, campers?
Yeah.
I was under the impression that it was either or. You either had to be in a class or a camper. Was that not true? Was that not?
In the enrolled classes was with a boat. So you could be either a camper,
Right.
camping overnight,
Right.
or if you were in a class that involved a boat, you could bring your boat.
Right.
That sounds right.
Just need a word.
It says enrolled.
This seems to see if you enroll in a class, you can bring a boat, but that's not true. It has to be
Right.
enrolling in a class that has a boat.
So we would just add, if a participant is enrolled in boat
Boating
class?
classes.
A boating class.
A boating class, okay.
Or boating classes. And then, that's it, Paul?
That's it for me, thank you.
Edwin, you got any?
No.
I do. Number 2, I think it's Besser Lodge, B-E-S-S. It's not Busser.
Oh, yeah,
I think it's Besser.
it is.
And then number 2 on page 3 of 4, the motions. And then number 10 under public comment, Chair Syke overed public comment.
Opened?
Opened, yeah, opened.
Yeah, all these people look at these.
And I know. What'd you say? And then, I believe I had a quick second to, as I was walking, looking at the tape, I believe Mr. Bednar's indicated that his chorus made, those speaking were disappointed that they were not allowed public comment during agenda item 8. Because they were allowed public comment at the end. They just weren't permitted the public comment according to the agenda, number 8, as approved. Well, that's it.
Any other changes or comments?
Good job, though, because it was a long one.
Okay,
That's it, I'll move to approve the agenda of the special meeting of March 24th, 2022,
With the amendments?
with the amendments.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes of March 24th, 2022 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. It's public comment for any topic other than the agenda items. If you have any comments, feel free to come to the podium, announce your name and address. Okay, it's not seeing any comments at this time. There will be comments on the other items as they go forward in the agenda. Correspondence, we have some additional items that are on your desk. Was there any comments to those that you wanted to add regarding the correspondence?
No, just that we received updated response from Wade Trim for their engineering review, both for the beach house apartments as well as the Alexandra Inn. So those were email correspondence that were just updated responses to previous engineering comments that they had provided. Additionally, the remainder of the public comments is in relation to the proposed developments from members of the public. And Garfield Township is updating their master plan, so you'll see that.
Okay, moving on, we have reports. Mindy Walters for Township Board. Welcome back to the Planning Commission.
All about that. Well, I have blank stare at everybody. I don't even remember what we were talking about last, so, you know what? I can't tell you right now.
All right, we'll move on.
Forget all about that.
Zoning Board of Appeals.
We have a
Paul?
meeting.
Didn't have a meeting? Yeah, it's been a short period of time. And then Planning and Zoning?
Okay, I have one quick update, and then just wanted to get a little bit of feedback from the Planning Commission on 2 items. So the first update is just we've had, Judy had asked last month just for more updates, and so you'll see included in your packet is the land use permit special, as well as short-term rental. So we had 28 land use permits issued to date, compared with 20 in last year. At this time, there's 135 active short-term rental licenses, and 7 of those are new for this year. The first thing that I wanted to just get feedback from the Planning Commission on is scheduling special meetings. So you'll see we have a very lengthy agenda tonight. We have 6 items. I was wondering the Planning Commission's thoughts on if we have 3 or more items. So if we're going to hit 4 items that are public hearing, site plan review of substance, that we have a special meeting those months. And I would propose the 3rd Tuesday of the month. And we could have that as a standing meeting that we would go to if it's looking like we're going to have a lengthy agenda. Another option would be also starting the meetings at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. We could do either or. We could start earlier and try to keep it 1 meeting per month, but it does look like we're having a lot of items on our agenda. We've already had 2 site plans submitted for the month of May, and I'm anticipating at least 1 more coming in for the month of May. So we do have a lot of business to attend to, and I want to make sure we can do that in a timely manner without having these marathon meetings.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
2/3 vote, is that what it is? According to our bylaws,
Of
Special
establishing a special meeting.
isn't it? I don't remember, but that's fine. I'm for it.
Any other thoughts?
I'd rather do 2 meetings than
Yeah.
the 7-hour brain damage.
I agree.
Okay, so I think we're generally supportive of that.
Okay.
What do you think about having kind of that standing third Tuesday? I mean, one of the things it becomes a moving target otherwise, and it's,
Yeah.
trying to look at people's schedules, applicant schedules, that type of thing, so.
Golf on Tuesday? I don't.
Okay.
I'd be fine with it.
What about the time? I'm fine with 6:30, quite honestly, so, but I have a longer
Yeah,
workday
6:30.
than a lot of people, so.
Works
but-
better for me as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're good with kind of using the third Tuesday at 6:30, and we can make adjustments as we go forward.
Okay, that sounds great, thank you.
How will you notify us if there's a packed, if there's a certain number of applications coming in, you're going to do that? Would you just send out a notice?
Yeah, I'll send it out by email, and I'm happy to make phone calls as well, if that's.
Email's fine. So it would happen once you recognize that the agenda is kind of going to be packed for the first Tuesday, and then you split them? Okay.
Yep, I'll get that notification out to you as quickly as possible, and then also get those, get the agenda posted so the public is aware of the special meeting as
Okay.
quickly as possible as well. And then the other piece is just wanted, looks like the master plan will be ready for review by the planning commission soon, and wanted to just see if there was a preference. I would send it out to you to have at least a few weeks to review, preferably more prior to an upcoming meeting. Do you want to hold a special work session to review that master plan? Or do you want to have it as part of a regular meeting? So just for a little kind of context of what the next steps of the process, I'd present a draft master plan to you. It's the same, action plan that you've already reviewed. You've reviewed most of the chapters, but the next step would be for the planning commission to make any changes or recommendations to it, and then send it to the board of trustees. The board of trustees would review it, and they would ultimately vote to send it out for the 63-day public comment period. So it's in no way like in a final format, and it's still going to undergo a couple months of public review. But I just wanted to see, do you see would you like to have a special work session dedicated to the draft plan, or do you want to just have it on an upcoming agenda?
What are your thoughts?
I would rather just have one meeting to concentrate on that, and that's it, rather than confuse it with other things.
Renee?
I wasn't around when it was discussed the last time, so I don't know how lengthy it is, but it maybe seems like it might warrant a meeting by itself.
I think it would be good to have a separate meeting, just
Yeah.
because you can
Because then you can just focus on.
more on
yeah.
planning items that related to the policies
Yeah.
and so forth. I think it'd be probably easier, so, yeah. And maybe that could be one of our third Tuesdays that we would use that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
It's not 800 pages, so. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, next we have the business before the Planning Commission. So as our agenda is amended, we're going to be doing 9A, B, and C, then have a 10-minute break, and then continue with 9D, E, and F. So 9A is Site Plan Review 1-22, Special Land Use 1-22, Raymond Farm Wedding Venue. Update, discussion, possible action. So if I could just hear from staff first.
Sure, so you'll remember, last month we had a public hearing on this application, and the Planning Commission went through and had some additional items that they wanted the applicant to look at and provide, additional information. So let me find the page on that, because I put them all in the report. It's page 20, that's of mine. It's on page 26 in your packet. There's a list of kind of items from the March 1st meeting that you had. Lighting, sign details, hours of operation, number of events, landscape details, a buffer on neighboring property, road maintenance agreement, sound mitigation plan, fencing, pedestrian connections, and then the occupancy of the barn. So the applicant did go through and provide additional information related to each of those items. And I think they probably can come up here and they can explain each of them for you. But I went through and found that there were a couple of waivers they are requesting that were in my staff report, mostly related to landscaping and the surface of the parking lot. And then I did put in some standards for approval based on the criteria. There are a couple you'll notice that I did either are met or not met. Just based on the discussion that was at last month's meeting, I didn't know which way the planning commission would feel or was comfortable with. After you receive this additional information tonight, there was, a lot of discussion about the number of events and the hours in the neighborhood. So I wasn't comfortable going one way or the other. I think there'll need to be a little dialogue, and then we can work through those. On your desk, there was an email that talks about, it says Gmail on the top of it, that's related to this, and there's a small packet of letters that also came in that were on your desk for this application.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to do is have the applicant come up and address some of the changes, and then we can go from there.
All right, good evening. Yeah, so following last month's meeting, we met with Claire and Sarah to kind of go over, some of the comments that were brought up, and they're all outlined in that letter that was provided to you guys, so I don't want to go through all of them per se, but, I want to touch on the key ones. As far as operationally, the hours, we've kind of settled on, 4 to 10 p.m., lights out by 11, which was a comment that was brought up. And then as far as capacity and number of guests, we're looking at now 200 people or the maximum building occupancy, whatever is lower of that, and the associated parking area has been revised per that number, shrunk down, and we provided some more landscaping details that was requested. And then another thing is from 12 weddings that we requested last time, we lowered that down to 8. So we hope that that is a favorable number with you guys. On top of that, there was a road maintenance agreement that Soup had her neighbor sign, saying that she will maintain the road during the summer months. We added the sign, as was mentioned. The proposed lighting is now dark sky compliant. Picked a new fixture for that, and then we showed the light distribution limits on the plans. Parking lot, as I mentioned, was reconfigured. And then the biggest thing that was brought up, and which is valid, is about noise. Sue's agreed to install a noise monitoring system in the barn, which essentially, when noise reaches a certain limit, it doesn't allow the music to keep going up or shuts it off. There's a model that was provided. It'll be something very similar to that, equally approved. And then she also did some testing. She turned the volume up in the barn with speakers to 95 decibels, which is what would be allowed by her rules. And at the property line, I think it was 40-something decibels or something like that, which is pretty minimal. I think a car is 75 decibels for reference. She also was able to go out and talk to a lot of the neighbors, many of whom are here today in support. And you've got some of those letters in front of you to review. And the one thing I do want to make a point of is, I think there's 48 Fridays and Saturdays between, May and October, and we're asking for 8 of those days to be able to hold weddings on, at 6 hours at a time. I just want to have you guys keep that in mind as you guys discuss. So, if there's any questions for me at this time.
Can I ask some?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you explain how decibels are calculated for us?
I am not a sound engineer, so I cannot. There's a machine that Sue has that records basically the sound, and
I know we have a chart in there.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that sound decibels are not calculated linear, they're calculated exponentially, which means that that 40 that 90 or 100, 80, I'm sorry, because 40 would be 80, is 5 times more than 40. It's not It's not just 50 decibels more, it's 5 times. So in essence, let me give you an example. 95 decibels is recess at an elementary school at lunch, where all the kids are outside. So just so you kind of know how loud that is. I mean, just to give you an idea. So you can't really just say, here's 40 decibels for a
Sure.
car going down a road, and it's 50 more for the sound. It's not calculated that way.
And I
So-
do want to add on that it's the 95 decibels, where that number came from is we kind of did some research with different municipalities, and that is what they have in their ordinances for what's allowed for wedding venues in particular, is 95. So that's kind of where that number came from.
And then, do you know how far 95 decibels, like if you didn't have any buffering carries?
That I do
You
not
don't
know.
know, okay. I think it's something like for every, like 40 is like 16 meters, which is 52 feet. So could be 100 and some feet, just as a reference. But thank you for that information.
And that information's all dependent on the humidity and the airflow, and
Right.
that's why people get paid big bucks to figure that out.
Right, but we can't be tricked by thinking it's linear, because it's not a linear calculation.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to do that is to think of other items that you commonly know of and what the volume is, like a lawnmower or a car, or your dishwasher. A dishwasher is like 60, can be. Some of the new ones are not, a lot less.
A chainsaw's about 110, so that's
Yeah.
pretty loud.
And that is in the barn too, that it's,
Yeah.
once you have the barn surrounding everything, it should lower it on the outside.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one fast one. The noise was from the barn to the gravel access drive? Is that did you check it from the barn to, was that 3 Mile?
We did not know. Yeah, because you're 3 miles way up there compared to where the barn is at.
Yeah, you have the,
Yeah, we didn't check it up there, though.
Okay.
As far as metering goes.
Any other questions? The applicant?
I have a question just regarding, I wasn't here at the last March meeting. I'm just curious, are the guests going to be restricted to the inside of the barn?
It is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, that they will be able to go outside, but it's not, free range, There's no bonfires, which I think was discussed last time, stuff like that. They have to walk to their cars to get there and all that, but
Right.
the main, music, everything is inside the barn.
Okay.
And the restrooms are outside, so
Yes.
they need to go outside to get to the restrooms.
Did you see you seen the staff report on this in our packet?
Yep.
And so staff offered some suggested conditions, there's 6 of them there. I know one of them you've already addressed and so forth. Are you comfortable with those, or?
Yes.
Have any comment on it? Okay. Any other questions for Shane? No, Mindy?
When you did your noise evaluation or sound evaluation, did you have all the doors and everything open on the barn like you would on a hot summer
I
night?
will defer to Sue, she handled that, so yes.
And my next question is you are asking for 8 nights, but it doesn't say anything about the fact that they may or may not be back to back to back to back to back, so we could have every Saturday and Sunday in the month of July? Or maybe for 8 days in a row in the month of July?
I believe if it was in there, it should have been weekends. It was
Yeah, it
Friday,
said
Saturdays.
Friday and
Oh,
Saturdays.
yeah, it did say.
But if they're back-to-back weekends, it's still only the max number 8 is what we're looking for. So, but we didn't specify that, they could be spaced out.
The planning commission did just put conditions on a different event where it was no consecutive weekends.
Right, but that's not on here.
I understand that, so that was a condition, that could be something, if that's a concern, the planning commission could do here too.
Can the lights be turned off, like, out in the parking area?
The solar ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the whole thing again with the solar is that they can be put away when there's no weddings, because we don't want to, have them out there all the time if we don't need them. And they do have a switch on them, so.
Any other questions or comments or queries? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So what is everyone's thoughts here? Had a public hearing, we've had some changes to the original proposal. There's some conditions here. I don't know if everybody's looked at those conditions, if they had any additional items or thoughts or concerns at this point? Maybe if we could just kind of go through here and one by one. Mindy, what's your thoughts?
I'm concerned about the back-to-back-to-back nights and weekends. Going through, say, the month of July and just having every Friday and Saturday night, just as a neighbor, I don't want that.
Okay. What if it had some
I think,
alternating weekends or something like that? Would that
I
be?
think you need non-consecutive nights and non-consecutive weekends.
Okay. Any other issues or anything?
I'm curious as to how the sound monitoring plan is going to work and how she's going to be able to, monitor that, if that's something that there's an alarm that goes off or something that says, hey, we're too loud, and who's going to do that, and, like we talked about, the sound at the property line is really where our issue could be. And, that hot summer night, everybody's outside, nobody's inside the barn because it's too warm in there, and things go outside that monitored area is kind of what I'm concerned about.
Carl?
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about the consecutive nights as well. Just, I think that people choose to get married on, probably the most likely nicest nights of the year, and so you could have, say, 8 within the month of July. I guess I'd be more comfortable with putting some conditions on that to spread them out. And if it's possible to enforce everything inside the barn, I think that would really contain a lot of the noise. But I guess there is concern that people would spill out. I agree with Mindy that, I don't know, I'm trying to think how you would enforce that.
I agree with Mindy's statement. I wish I'd have had that a week ago, 2 weeks ago. But I think overall, I appreciate the fact that they addressed the brining, and I saw a letter offering up that service to take care of the road, which I know was a topic we addressed, and they proposed a solution. Yeah, I think it's just kind of the consistency of these things, right? The delusion of that event, so it doesn't impact. And I think if they are going to go from May until October, I think it's, I'm just trying to think of other places like that have events like that. Like, Timber Ridge is in my backyard. That's a party every weekend. But, it's at the same token, they don't have them as frequent when they do have larger events, and I think that kind of helps to the neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhood. So I like that idea if the applicant's willing to kind of take that into consideration. But I do appreciate them listening to the concerns that we had, and at least coming up with a plan to address it.
Judy?
Yeah, I think you looked at the lighting, and it does say, hopefully you'll use the one maybe on page 40 where it says to meet IDA dark sky fixture seal of approval, it has to be the 3,000 K in the candle area, so I think that one, the not approved is the 4,000 candles, so I think, we need to make sure that you're using, if we do approve this, that we're using the correct solar ones. I noticed that the road brining or the whatever is more of a handshake deal. My concern is, what happens when neighbors change and the property, maybe this property changes? Is that, those can kind of turn into sometimes a feud rather than the handshake that it originally started out to. So just an FYI. I think it's great that reducing the parking and keeping it away from that neighbor, and maybe some additional plantings in there, because, John, you have that page open, you can see the house. So I'm thinking maybe some trees where it kind of dips down like that might be something. The sign out front, the sign is nice looking. I just didn't know what the illumination was for that. It would have to meet our dark sky compliance too. I think that's something to look at. 1 second. Yeah, regarding the sound limiter, when I did my research on decibels, Mindy, just to kind of answer that, they have this electronic device, and it goes on the system, and as soon as it goes above that decibel, and it measures that, it shuts the system down, like it stops the music. I don't know the cost.
They can stop a live band.
Right. I think it just shuts the amplification down in the microphones. I think it could be hooked into the but if it's a jazz band and you're not using that, that could be an issue. So, just kind of, that's a really good point. If they're horns and loud string instruments,
Yeah.
that would be hard to shut down with the sound limiter. But they are out there. The other thing that I did have on there was, the thing that concerns me the most is that once these things are okayed, they do go with the land in perpetuity. And you did a great job on the renovation of the place. It's wonderful what you did. I looked at all the pictures of what it was before. I'm just really concerned about this, because we all don't live here forever, unfortunately, as much as we want to think we do. But it changes hands, and that's where my concerns are.
Okay. Renee?
I would agree with that. That's that's valid, So whatever we do, I guess is what we're saying is whatever we do, we need to make sure we do right so that if it does ever change hands. I'm definitely in agreement. I feel like we need to be, I think you used the word consistent, Dan, and I think that we do need to be consistent on things like this as far as not doing back-to-back. I think if I was a neighbor, I'd probably not want that in my backyard every weekend, so I think that we need to put some kind of condition there. And I did have a question, and I don't know, I read through all of this, and I'm not sure if I saw anything, but Tracy had did a lot of talking in regards to landscaping or something up at the beginning of the road between the neighbor directly across. Did that get addressed anywhere in here? Because I didn't see it. But I know that we did a lot of discussion about that.
They provided some pictures in your packet, which is, it starts on page 32 out of 331. That's these trees are showing what's currently existing in the easement between the road and the Overmeyer, I believe that's the
Okay.
same property.
Okay.
So they did not propose to add anything in there. They felt. that-
Because there's already something there? Okay. All right. All right, that was my other question, is what happened to that, so that answers that. And I think that was it. I hear what everybody's saying about the sound, so obviously, none of us are sound experts, so, if there is better ways to, better equipment, better ways to make sure that is controlled, I guess is the better word, then I think that should be definitely looked at. But other than that, that's all I have.
Paul?
Do we know exactly what the capacity of the barn is?
Not yet.
Okay. I think most people have covered pretty much the main points. I think the idea of separating or spreading out the 8 occasions makes some sense. Concern is always noise, and I guess you're just going to have to police that. But I was just curious about what the capacity of the barn was. I know you're at 200, but,
I think at this point, since
Can you come up to the
Yeah.
microphone?
yeah, please.
In regards to the, building capacity, she hasn't gone through and got plans done for the inside yet, because if this doesn't get approved, then those plans are essentially worthless. So that's why the number of guests is limited to whatever is lower between the barn or 200 people. If it comes back as 100 is the maximum capacity, that's what the number of guests is going to be allowed at, is 100. But at this point, it hasn't been submitted to building department or, fire for their review yet, because she doesn't have plans done for the inside of the barn.
Okay, thanks. That's all, John.
Okay. I guess I kind of made some of my thoughts known at the last meeting, and I would kind of echo some of the comments here, particularly when Judy talks about the special land use permit, it goes with the land. And I don't, quite honestly, when I look in seeing in our ordinance that allows for small places of assembly in pretty much every district in the township, I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea. But that's why it's a special use permit. So it's put in place to allow for certain uses if they kind of meet the threshold. And there's some standards that is part of the staff review went through, and specifically to special land uses. And that's where staff gave some alternate options here on some of those standards and whether it's compatible to the area. I think I think the applicant has done a great job in putting together a proposal. I think it's a nice, potentially a nice operation. I think it's well thought out, they've responded. But at the end of the day, when I look at there's an aerial image that's right on page, I don't know what number that is, 5 of 331. It's that aerial image with all the homes that are in the area. And this is where even though there's been a lot of these conditions placed that address sound and so forth, which is the primary thing, but there's also the traffic of cars, and granted, it's not something that would be, frequent. 8 events isn't a lot, but it could be enough where it could ruin some people's evenings of having cars going back and forth, or at least all leaving all at once towards the end of an evening. And I guess my concern is how this really fits into that area. I look at that and I see a lot of addresses there, a lot of homes, and it seems one of the things when we have conditions placed like this, those conditions are often well thought out and well intended, but the challenge is how do are they enforced? And sometimes those can be done by the applicant, but when you have things like when it's like things like sound and so forth, it's usually going to have to be complaint-driven. I mean, they may have some restrictions and so forth, but sometimes there can be other noise that's beyond their control. And that's where then, there's a call to the township, it's usually after the fact, and that there's problems with noise. To me, it becomes a bit of a challenge for management of those complaints and puts a lot of pressure on the zoning administrator to make sure that there's not future complaints or complaints about that. And I think our applicant has very good intentions, and I think would probably do a very good job. But like we mentioned, it runs with the land. This property could be sold. We don't have any control over that. Could get somebody that could still use this as an event center and might not be as good of a steward of that property in a way that doesn't impact those neighbors. So I think there's a lot of interest in these types of facilities throughout the area. There's a lot of demand. And it seems to be a very growing trend in this area, and I don't see it changing. So I think is that aspect of the continued demand for it. So I don't see this, once it's established, that it wouldn't, cool off, so to speak. I could see it advancing more, or potentially. So those are kind of my concerns, is just, and I don't know if there's really any conditions that would probably alleviate my concerns, but it's mainly from the ability to manage the noise as well as the traffic and vehicles that are going in and out of that location. So we did have, I think we have some conditions here that were provided by the staff. There's 6 of them there on page 22, or whatever, 23, okay. Gotcha. So those are there. Judy mentioned a couple others, and I think, for instance, like the sign location, there would have to be some illumination of that. I think you also mentioned the additional landscaping would be something that could be added to that as well.
Yeah, I took a couple of notes as you guys were talking.
Okay.
So one, I was thinking about adding to the sign location, we added to the site plan, the sign shall meet ordinance requires and obtain proper permits. We could add that onto that. Number 7 could be lights to be turned off when there's no events on site.
Okay.
Number 8, and this I just took based on the last application we had, events limited to 1 a weekend with no consecutive weekends. And a weekend here is Friday and Saturday. Number 9 is that the lighting be the 3,000 kelvins. Number 10, just for clarity and for enforcement purposes, capacity limited to 200 people or occupancy permit, whichever is less. And then number 11 would be additional landscaping required along the east line. You're talking about down by the parking lot, the immediate adjacent property there. Yep.
And then, Sarah, since I think the original parking was for, help me out, what was their original?
I think it was for 300 people, so they had 150 spots.
Right, so they would be down to 200, so they just need 100 spots. So it would be moved to the west.
Further away from the dirt road,
Yeah, or further
Yeah.
away from that house.
from the house. Okay.
So they did rearrange it, because the parking lot used to go kind of north and south, and now they just put one entrance in, because if you'll remember, they had 3 entrances before into the parking lot. So they reduced it down to 1 curb cut for the parking lot, and then kind of turned it so it runs east-west now. They are proposing some evergreen plantings along the north side of that parking lot and the east side of the parking lot, to help with some buffering and screening. But the additional area that I was just talking about would be in that 10-foot setback area that's just to the east, further over where that house is, by Brandon, I can't see, and Victoria Green, I can't see what the last name is in there because of the topography. But along that line, because that is in the picture on, let me see the page.
I think it's one of the first 33, no, wait,
Yeah.
it's not that, it's 31, 31, yeah.
You can see their house kind of, there's a little hole in that evergreen, kind of existing buffer, so filling that in with some more evergreen trees.
This may be kind of silly, but can we specify them being like this might be silly, but like a faster growing? I mean, so that they're not, I mean,
You can specify, the ordinance has a minimum height for all
Okay.
trees that are planted.
Okay.
And so for the evergreen, is it 6 foot, it's either 6 foot or 8
Okay.
foot? 6 foot,
Okay.
so they'd be required to be 6
Okay.
foot evergreen.
good.
So I think that would be a good height to have as a part of the conditions. Unfortunately, our ordinance only requires that in the Forest Lakes Overlay District.
Oh. Yeah, because I mean, otherwise, if you put little ones, it could be years before they, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll put that required along the east line, 6 foot in height to buffer. Did I miss any? That's all the ones that I wrote down. Does anybody have anything additional?
Got one question. Since we are talking about this going with the land and putting in your number 10, limited to 200 occupancy of the barn, should we specify what the dimensions of the barn is? Because you could always increase the size of the barn, which would, let's say theoretically, let's say it comes to occupancy of about 100. All right, we all agree. But then somewhere down the road, someone builds a little bigger barn. Now your occupancy goes up. Do we want to specify that in some way?
That would mean we should.
So they could go up to 200. I'm going to defer to Claire. If they amend that site plan, would it need to come back to the planning commission?
Yeah, that would be considered an amendment to the special land use permit, which would come back to the planning commission if there was a remodel of that barn,
Okay,
an increase.
okay, I'm just looking to,
Yeah.
close the barn door.
You want to say that all night.
No pun intended.
Okay,
I thought it said someplace that we can't waive the fence, but can we? Or what's the situation there?
I thought we saw something like that, too.
It's on page, 13 of 23 of the report. It talks about off-street parking abutting, would be low-density residential, shall provide a fence no less than 4 feet and 6 inches. So they've requested a waiver from that. I didn't find anywhere in the zoning ordinance that you could waive that fencing requirement. I think that'd be something that would, I don't know how you've applied it in the past, if it's just along that parking lot, right? If they could put it right next to the parking lot, or if it has to be along that whole property line. I guess that would be up to the planning commission to determine what that looks like.
But this doesn't really, I mean, it doesn't really give us the ability to adjust. I mean, we could add in more landscaping, but
I mean, I think the fencing is required.
Yeah.
To me, the only variable is it right next to the parking lot, or is it next to the property line because the parking's there? Have you done it a certain way?
yeah.
I would tend to think because it's in the parking section that it would be referring to the park. So I would think that the fence would need to cover the entire length of the parking lot, not necessarily the entire property.
Yeah, it was stating off-street parking areas, so I think that we could conclude that that's the parking lot itself. But yeah, that's a provision. Looks like it doesn't give us any leeway on that. We can enhance it if need be, but in terms of additional landscaping, but looks like that's a requirement. Quite honestly, I think that's where it doesn't anticipate these types of situations, because it's probably anticipating more of on a commercial type of location. Okay, so we have 11 suggested conditions.
Well, 12 now.
12,
So the
yes.
fencing as required in whatever that section number is. So it's section 703, number 7.
Okay. Anybody want to entertain or consider a motion?
Are there any of these standards that you want to walk through that I gave you 2 options to decide on, or?
Why don't we do that? I'm
That's a
kind of
good
getting
idea.
crickets back here, so
No, that's
let's
a
do
good
that.
So, I mean, I'll just walk through the criteria real quick for you.
Sure.
Starts on page, it's got 17 out of 23 with the special land use criteria. So A talks about consistent with the comprehensive plan. Your plan does allow for limited commercial activity in the zoning ordinance, and this property is just inside the urban growth boundary for the township. So I put that was satisfied. Item B, design, constructed, operated, consistent with existing and intended character. Here's one of the examples where I gave a satisfied and a not satisfied. So you will need to kind of decide for satisfied. I said the limited changes to the site, the proposed parking is grass with additional landscaping. Applicant will limit the number of events to 8 per year, May through October, or not satisfied. While there are limited changes to the site, the use will generate excessive noise and traffic to the neighborhood. Property is accessed by gravel drive and surrounded by multiple single-family dwellings. This use will change the essential character of the area with increased use to the property.
Any comments on that? You know, I guess this is the one that, when I think of this location, I think the property owner has done a great job in restoring that site and really making it a really neat place. But I also think of, what if the barn wasn't there and somebody came in an application and they were constructing something new, a new facility, which they could. It would be permitted as a place of assembly, special use permit. Would that look differently, or would that be something that would, be addressed in a different way? This happens to be a barn. It was, a farm at one point, had a different role and purpose, and obviously it hasn't been operating in the way it was originally, probably for some time. But because it's located where it's at, it becomes this potentially attractive place to have it as a assembly hall. But if this was new construction, which potentially it could, would we still see it in the same light? That would be my concern on that. So,
To me, I'm okay with it, given the, the limited number of events a year. I mean, 8, when I think about it and spread out, and they're not they're not back-to-back, spread out throughout, several months. I feel like summers fly by so fast anyway. The occurrence, if to me, if it was an occurrence that was regular, meaning its sole purpose of its sole use, this is an accessory use, in my opinion, to them just living there. Like, I almost feel like this is almost a home-based business to an extent, because it's not like their primary income. It's something that's gonna help, is the way I'm feeling about this. If it was something where, like, the primary use of the site was just to have weddings and larger events, like, that's one thing. And I think that would have a tremendous impact on the community. If it is spread out over a long duration of time, there's someone who's living there who she doesn't want, I would imagine that you probably don't want these things to carry out all night long and be a nuisance or impact negatively your property. I feel like we're, in the situation that's being presented to us, it's a pretty good fit for having a steward there, rather than it being a commercial entity that's not attached to the house. It's almost like in my mind, like an Airbnb kind of situation where you've got someone or a bed and breakfast, where you have someone who's actually there to help cater to the person they're providing a service to, live. So I guess that's kind of why I feel like I'm okay with it, that situation mixed with the limited number of events. And that's why I think this can be met, or we could make the case if we want to, that this can be met also because it is in the growth boundary. We've been talking about that a lot as far as the uses and where we want to focus these things. That's been a part of our dialogue. Albeit in the edge, which actually, in my opinion, is kind of the best case scenario, given the fact that it's right up against consumer's easement and agricultural land to the south, it gets pretty sparse there, because there were residential neighborhoods, of course, to the north and to the west. So that's just where I'm at. If the number of events grows dramatically, that I think would be a totally different conversation.
Okay.
But just to be clear, if they ever wanted to increase that, they have to come back, right? Because that would be changed, okay.
So, yeah, what you're proving is both the site plan and the use itself. So what is presented in the packet is the evidence as part of the site plan and all the details that go with it. But, yeah, if there's alterations to that, expand it, as well as any of the conditions. Let's say they wanted to go up to 9 events or 10 events, that would have to be amended.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think my concern, they've done a great job with the property and the renovation of the property. It's a cool piece of land, and I concur with that. My concern is, again, it's zoned low-density residential. People live there under that for years, and under that there wasn't going to be a large venue, commercial venue, and properties change. So we do know that all the neighbors will change eventually, and what we do today, maybe we won't be around to see, but that's not what it's zoned. And I have a concern with that and the people that were accustomed to living in that zoning area. I just don't, I understand, and I think it's different than a bed and breakfast. You don't have 200 people at night having a big party. I mean, it's a celebration. A wedding should be a celebration. I mean, you don't have 95 decibels equivalent. They don't, they'd have to go over to the elementary school to hear that. That's about what it is at the playground. So a bed and breakfast doesn't generate the same amount of noise and traffic as 100 cars going down the road. I think it's a little different than that. And I like the idea that the owner lives on the site. That's great. But Those are my concerns.
Any other thoughts? We'll move on. Want me to just cover the rest of these? Yeah.
I kind of have a one for a yes and one for a no, and a lot of silence. Can I get a majority kind of opinion? No, satisfied, not satisfied?
Well, maybe let's just go through and then
Okay.
kind of,
Come back.
because I think, quite honestly, I think what this is going to come down to is somebody's going to have to make a motion to do something here. So let's just review them
Okay.
so that and then let that kind of sink in, and we'll come back to the potential action.
So item C, not hazardous or disturbing to existing or future uses in the general vicinity. So I have the satisfied, it's very similar to the last condition, limited to the hours and the number of events. They have a noise control plan. Not satisfied is that it's just disruptive to the neighborhood and general vicinity with the additional traffic and noise, and that there's many dwellings in the vicinity of the property.
Okay? Go ahead.
Okay. Item D, be served adequately by essential public facilities. I did put this was satisfied. The fire department has an approval letter in there, and then the applicant's providing portable restroom facilities to the site, so no health department's required for that. And then item 4 talks about the planning commission waiving or modifying requirements. And I did put in there that there are a couple of waivers requested that were in my staff report, mostly related to, like I mentioned, some of the landscaping and the parking surface being able to be grass, which the ordinance does allow the planning commission to do that, depending on the use. Oh, did I go backwards?
Yeah, you
Oh, sorry,
skipped.
wrong page.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good, it's
I
not just
flipped the
me.
page and went
I was
backwards.
like, where are we?
Item E, I'm sorry.
All right.
Not create excessive additional requirements, public costs. I said that this was satisfied due to the limited number of people and events. Item F, not involve uses that would be detrimental to any person, property, or general welfare. I have a satisfied here, just based on the limitations, like we've discussed, the number of people, the days, and the conditions that are being imposed. And then not satisfied is that it would generate excessive noise and traffic in the area that would be detrimental to the neighboring properties. G, ensure the environment has been preserved in its natural state. I said this was satisfied. There's minimal changes to the site. The parking is proposed to be grass. The topography is maintained. They are going to be using some of the trees on site to move to other areas to use as their landscape buffering around that parking. Item H meets the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance, and I did put that was satisfied as well, just based on the report. Although, if you go through and have any not satisfied, then we should change that one to not satisfied for that. Section 635 talks about specifically places of assembly. This does meet the definition for a small place of assembly. So a lot of these regulations and conditions are related to large places of assembly. So A and B do not apply because they're large. Item C talks about located on a parcel of land that meets the minimum lot size in the district and not exceed the maximum lot coverage. So they have a 16-acre parcel out there, so that's satisfied. D is related to large parcels. E talks about signage, so they did provide some details, but we'll add that condition about the putting it on the site plan, and that a separate permit's required before installation. Off-street parking, that does meet the ordinance except for that fence that is required, that we've talked about adding the condition for that fencing. G talks about the landscaping. This does have those couple of waivers in there for the landscaping requirements. And then item H doesn't apply, that talks about childcare. So the last section is your site plan review criteria. Item A talks about the relationship between the streets and the highways and all of that. I said this is satisfied, the use is on a private drive. There's no on-street parking allowed, and there's grass parking provided on the property. Item B, structures, entrances located to minimize adverse impacts upon owners and occupants. I did say this was satisfied with the additional landscaping, provided the limited number of people and the number of events. C, talks about the natural features of the property and the landscape. Again, there's limited changes to the site, so I believe this requirement's been met. Item D, adverse impacts of the proposed development and activities are minimized to residents and owners by screening, fencing, walls, and landscape. And so I did say this was satisfied based on the landscaping that's proposed there, the additional fencing that would be required. D, meets all the provisions of the ordinance. I said this was satisfied, they haven't requested a variance. They've provided the information that's required in the zoning ordinance.
You mean E?
Yes.
Okay.
F talks about emergency vehicles. We do have fire department review and approval on this to move forward. The item G, soil erosion, stormwater discharge. So there's no physical changes to the site, being that everything's grass or mowed grass, other than the driveway that they are going to be installing some of that to get up to the site in the dumpster area, which for any land use permit, you'd be required to get your soil erosion permit for that before you could get a land use permit. Item H, we don't have any stream or shore nearby. Item A talks about being consistent with the intent and purpose of zoning, the character, reduce hazards, kind of your catch-all for everything. And I did say that was satisfied if it's allowed by your special use criteria and just based on the number of limited days and limited number of people.
Okay, Sarah's been nice enough to go through those standards and criteria. So there's a couple options here, and there's some conditions that have also been associated with the request. So I guess I'd entertain a motion. You could, regarding the special land use permit.
I'll kick it off. I'll make a motion to approve SPR 1-22 and SLU 1-22 for the Raymond Farms wedding venue with the conditions as stated in the staff report 1 through 6. I hope I get these right, and the additional ones. With additional condition 7, that events will be limited to one per weekend with no back-to-back or consecutive weekends. Number 8, that lighting and signage be addressed on the site plan and in compliance with the ordinance for the dark sky requirements, and any appropriate future permitting will be applied for installation of said signage. Number 9, that the venue is limited to an occupancy of 200 or the maximum building capacity, whichever is lower, as stated in the applicant's proposal. And number 10, compliance with the appropriate fencing measures as stated within the staff report. I forget.
Section 703-7.
Section 7037.
I think we're missing a couple.
Yeah, we're missing a few.
I'm open to amendments of
I
that
think-
motion as well.
Two more.
Yeah.
Lighting be limited to the 3,000 Kelvin.
Okay, yep.
And the additional landscaping required along the east property line, that shall be a minimum of 6 feet in height.
Yes and yes.
Lights off.
Lights off.
Oh,
Oh, I checked that one off. You didn't say that, though. Yeah, you did. Your number 2 talked about lights, I thought.
in compliance with the zoning ordinance, but I like that one too, to where, so
Lights turned off when no events on site.
13, yes, thank you.
Okay, I think we have a motion. Any second to that?
I just want to be clear on the fourth condition, or what, sorry, the seventh condition, is it not consecutive weekends and weekend nights?
So only one a weekend, which is Friday and Saturday, and no consecutive weekends.
Okay. I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion as stated and seconded. Any discussion on this? Mindy?
Suggested condition number 2, no amplified sound. How does a DJ work without any amplification? How does a band work without any amplification?
Question for the applicant.
Not that right on the barn.
Okay.
Did you want to have the applicant address that?
I just want to make sure everybody here knows that that is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think no amplified sound means no amplified sound.
Yeah, I mean, if you could, so,
Acoustical guitar, and,
I think it's a valid question, go ahead. Have the applicant address it.
yeah.
I guess I couldn't understand the question back there.
One of our conditions is, that was suggested here, is that there's no amplified sound. So we're just wondering if there'd be, I guess Mindy was asking whether that would be, so how do you have music, I guess?
How do you have a DJ with no amplified sound?
Yeah.
I guess the big thing is the noise limiter. You guys did the study of the noise, so I guess I'd have to defer more to them on that, but, the biggest thing is that the noise limiter is gonna cut everything off above that decibel. I can't speak to the amplification.
This doesn't talk about decibels, this says no
I
amplified
guess I can
sound.
defer to them.
this is a suggested condition that was in the staff report.
So it sounds like what they're suggesting is they will have some amplified sound, but it'll have a limit to it. So it probably should be, that should probably be changed if we're going to accept what they're proposing.
I guess, yeah, you have to have amplified sound with the DJ.
Yeah.
I mean, but the whole thing is the noise limiter will cut it off.
Which is expensive. It's a lot of money to do this.
I understand that, but the motion on the second on the floor says that you will not have any amplified sound.
And again, I bring that up because that was part of what we talked about a couple weeks ago. And that was one of the things that I kind of felt like was something that we heard consistently with the neighborhoods in that situation too. And that was one of the things that kind of helped.
I'm
think
fine
provide
with it,
some
I
solace.
just want to make sure that
They understand.
they understand that that's what that motion is.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it possible to amend the motion then to have the amplified, to allow amplified sound with the, we're still monitoring the noise? I mean, I guess, how do you have a DJ without I'm not the sound engineer, so I'm kind of speaking
Right.
left wing here, but
I'd like to, if we could.
Yeah,
just
we'll
that.
discuss that here.
Yeah, if we could just discuss that with everybody. I don't want to be
Right.
the only one on a box on this one.
I'm fine with it, I just want to make sure that
You're fine with which one? No
no
amplified?
amplified.
As stated in there, as condition number 2. I mean, that was the motion.
Like I said, this is a difficult one for me because I think it is a really cool site, et cetera. But I'm really concerned about the land and the perpetuity in the neighborhood and the, what we're zoning things at. And I
The
understand
200.
it's a special land use, but it's also somewhat of a disturbance to a neighborhood. So that, I'm having a hard time with that, so.
Renee, do you have any comments about the amplified sound? Are you,
That's a really tough one because, like you said, you can't have music or a DJ without it. So to say none, what are we talking, an acoustic guitar or, anything you have, you're going to have some kind of amplification. So
You don't have a microphone.
They give examples,
Right.
string quartets, acoustic bands, jazz bands. I mean, they can play without amplified sound.
They provided that in there.
It's in their letter.
No, I saw
Yeah.
that, but,
But it also said DJ.
right. There was like several different suggestions, not just acoustical.
Right.
So how do you, I'm in agreement. If we have that as a condition, that literally means you're not having a DJ with an amplifier, or you're not having a,
A microphone.
a microphone. Right, this is amplified. So I don't know, that's a tough one. I feel like we either have to readdress it, or, I mean, to me, that would be, and I also do share, Judy's concerns about the neighbors, because, obviously, they have to live there, that we don't want to create a disturbance, but that's like, I don't know, are we setting them up for failure if we say no amplified sound? That just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know.
Paul, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, this one's, I'm just, riveted on the fact that the neighborhood, I mean, we've had other issues, there's some special meetings where we're talking about much the same thing. The only difference is that you're talking about much more vast areas versus this. I am concerned about the fact that it goes with the land and, what we have here. On the amplified sound or not, I think that if we have that in there, you're kind of dooming this to fail, because I can't see anybody wanting to be at an event where, it's, nothing more than pantomime. I mean, it's, it doesn't make sense. And how you fix it, I don't have any immediate thoughts on that.
Okay.
But I can't see saying, okay, go forth, but oh, by the way, sail your boat, but it's still tied to the dock. I don't see how you can do that.
Mindy, what's your thoughts on it?
I like the no amplified sound. I really do. But I think, I agree with Paul. That just makes it so that we're saying yes, but you can't do it.
I've been at a silent disco. You heard of that ever? I swear to God, like I'm not making
Oh, we
this
can
up.
just give everybody headphones.
I'm not
and they
kidding.
can-
That's what he's talking about.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to get down like that, there is a venue,
Yeah.
there's a way to do that. I've been to one at Grand Traverse, at the Commons. It's massive. It's wildly attended. It's a lot of fun. It's the same experience, except it doesn't affect anybody around you. Like, if they want to have that, they could do that. And that's why, like, I was comfortable with it, because
Okay.
no amplified sound.
Yeah,
They can figure it
I'm
out.
also comfortable with the no amplified sound, because I think you can have weddings with string quartets and things like that. Maybe it's not the kind of wedding some people want, but I think it is a wedding that some people want. And that, speaking to Judy's point, if we want things to run with the land, I think we want to put the conditions on that make them more acceptable. And I think limiting the number and spreading them out, limiting the noise and the possibility of noise are all good things to run with the land and the permit. And that's what makes me comfortable with it. And so.
However, in many of the letters that people wrote, they're concerned about traffic and alcohol and distraction. I mean, one of the biggest things in talking with the road commission is people are on their phones, and it's an issue. And so, I mean, that's something that we have to address with the neighborhood, the streets, the road, a 3 mile, getting out. That's something that we didn't talk about.
Yes,
And
and
that's a concern.
I agree it's a concern, but I think, at least for me, I mean, again, I live by Timber Ridge also, and I think the traffic is something that comes with growth, and it happens, and I think if you limit the amount of times that this can happen, then the traffic impacts are less, because it's 8 times per year. I think that is not an unreasonable amount of traffic to have to deal with. That's my opinion.
Okay. Well, let's get back to, we have a motion and support. So what I'd like to do is let's take a vote on that. So,
John, real quick before you.
Yep.
Can I just suggest that the motion also references that it meets the criteria from section 602, 635, and 820.7?
Yes, if you could include that in the motion, I would be happy to include that. 632,
602,
602.
635, and then 820.7.
so that's the special land use review standards, the standards for the places of public assembly, and then the site plan review criteria that Sarah reviewed for us.
I don't remember who was your second, though. Who would need to support that?
Carl was? Okay. All right, motion second to approve with those conditions based on the criteria that was presented and supported. All those in favor say yes.
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 All those opposed say no.
No.
No. Sounds like we have a 4-3 vote. Do you want a roll call on that?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Edley,
Yes.
Walters,
No.
Ferguson,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
No.
Nimitz,
No.
Leonard,
Yes.
Sykes.
No. Okay, looks like that has not passed then. So at this point, special land use permit, it's a action of the board, or the planning commission, not the township board, so, okay. So we'll be moving on to the next agenda item.
So the fact that
Yeah.
it's not approved means that it's denied?
Correct.
No action's taken, so it's.
So just a question on that, then, so that's as presented, though, I mean, does anybody, before we move forward, does anybody want to make,
Any other motion?
what's that?
You need to see if anybody has a different motion.
Yeah, does anybody have a different motion?
Do we need a motion to deny?
It'd be cleaner to have a motion to deny, but, I mean, technically, you have a vote, so it's a denial.
Just so then you can state exactly what section isn't in compliance.
Right.
You don't
Yeah.
have to, though. The fact that no action is taken is a denial.
Or is it just a tabling?
Well-
If I was in your shoes, I'd want to specifically state why it wasn't in compliance with those sections.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Dan on that, only from the standpoint that you have the findings of fact. Just as you have a findings of fact to support, you also have a findings of fact to deny. So conveniently enough, though, staff did provide some guidance in that, particularly under the special land use review. So anybody be interested in making a subsequent motion?
I'll make a motion to deny site plan review 1-22 special SUP. 1-22 for the Reman Wedding Barn based on the findings of fact outlined in the February 20th, 22 and March 28th, 22 revised memo from the planner with regards to the findings of fact, section 602, 635, and 8.
820.7.
Thank you.
Motion to deny, is there support for that?
Support.
Support, we have a motion to deny with support based on those findings. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed say no.
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 Let's do a roll call. I think we know what it is, but let's do it.
Edley,
No.
Walters,
Yes.
Ferguson,
No.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Nimitz,
Yes.
Leonard,
No.
Syke.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're good on that. And so at this point, the application has been denied for the farm wedding venue. So we are now moving on to site plan review 2-22, special land use 2-22, Beachview Apartments. And staff, if you have an update?
Sure, so I provided some documentation in your packet. Again, this was one we had a public hearing on last month as well. There was some information that was missing that the Planning Commission requested. I have that list on page 16 out of 17 of my report, which is, looks like page maybe 87 of the 331. So some of the information was provided.
Hold
There
on.
is-
Excuse me. Excuse us. Yeah, thank you.
Some of the information was provided, but there was some information that was not provided with the revised drawings. We have since received the revised landscaping plans, which are essentially the same because the parking area, even though they moved the parking from being I want to say two-sided, they adjusted it. The parking area itself, that asphalt is the same size as was on the previous plan. So they did provide, like I said, today over a landscaping plan that's the same as what was already provided. And we did receive a documentation from Wade Trim, which was on your desk, that states that there was no additional information provided for the snow storage that was requested in two of their previous memos that we sent over to the applicant. So in my staff report, you'll notice there's quite a few locations where there's information not provided, just because we didn't get that updated documentation this time around. And so my special land use review standards, there's quite a few of them that are partially satisfied or not satisfied due to the lack of information. And I kind of lay out on page 17 additional items that would be needed before consideration by the Planning Commission. So a landscape plan, which we did receive, nothing's changed on that. A lighting plan with the lighting details. They also did submit that today, which the lighting plan and the photometric plan meets the ordinance and the lighting details as well. The dumpster detail, that was provided with the additional documentation today. They did move the dumpster location on the site plan, so that's why I asked about the dumpster location. So you used to get into it from kind of the parking lot, and now it's going to face the entrance. So when you come in, you're going to see the dumpster sitting right there. It's kind of turned. So just to verify that the screening was still as they had proposed previously, because that had moved. One of the items was fencing detail and layout on site plan for a parking area. So this is kind of a holdover from a couple of meetings ago. We talked about kind of the sea of asphalt between the parking and the access easement that's next on the motel property. The Planning Commission liked having, a picket fence there, or some type of fencing, and kind of discussed that. In the revised drawing, there's no mention of that fencing included there. So I just asked the Planning Commission to decide if that's something you'd like to see there, as previously discussed, or if you're fine without any kind of delineation other than pavement markings. Stormwater review and approval, that is still outstanding, like I mentioned, with the Wade Trim report not getting that information for the snow removal. The missing site plan details, and then MDOT review and approval of the driveway and access easement there are existing curb cuts there, although they are doing some improvements to that access easement. And using that, I don't know if MDOT would have anything to say about it, I guess, essentially. That is more extensive use. There's currently 2 kind of cottages on the site, and then we're going now to a 12-unit apartment complex. I just don't know if they have comments, I guess, at this point. The applicant is here, and they can update you as well.
So it sounds like we got some additional information, stuff we're still waiting to hear from. So is it appropriate to take any action at this point? I mean, we haven't been able to see that information, and we still have some questions. I think it would be helpful to us maybe to discuss this a little bit, just because of it, because I think all those items still need to be provided, but the layout did change a little bit, so maybe if we just had some discussion. So maybe if we just hear from the applicant a little bit first, if you could, guys, come up and just say what changes you made, and then if we'll just kind of give you some feedback on that.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for all of your time and helping develop our community. Justin Mortier, 833 Vienna Way. We did adjust our site plan. We've got copies here as well for that. And we took your feedback with regards to that parking coming in from both the access drive and the driveway. We've since changed that into parking on both sides of the property with just a one driveway through the property and then exiting in front of the building into that access drive. Turn the dumpster. We still maintain the appropriate number of parking spaces. We do have permits into MDOT for stormwater. We've got soil borings planned for this week with regards to the snow and water runoff. Obviously, if we need to adjust those detention areas, once those come back, we will do so, as we have in the past. With regards to the fence along that sea of asphalt that was mentioned, we're open to that. We understand that putting in a split rail fence or maybe something more of a barricade to keep people on our property and not something that's going to get blown away or knocked over. So we're hoping to get your approval this evening so that we can begin moving on this project and have it be a useful place of housing staff and people in the community for next summer.
Okay, thank you.
Fred Campbell, 225 East 16th Street. Along those lines, the issue of the square footage for the snow retention, the ordinance requirement is 100 square foot for every 1,000 square foot of parking area. The revised parking area is roughly 7,200 square foot. It requires 720 square foot. If you look at the 8 spaces that are on the west side of the parking, that would require a 10-foot area to meet the 720 square foot. The retention basin is much larger than that, and we would be happy to provide that documentation. We received a note yesterday from Sarah saying we need the square footage, and contacted the engineer, and we're getting that information. But from a practical standpoint, we have more than enough area for that. We reached out to Sarah yesterday and asked if we could drop off hard copies. We did not get a response for that. I have 7 copies if you'd like to see the revised photometrics, the revised landscaping plan. As Sarah indicated, the landscaping plan did not change at all because the area for the parking area remained the same. With regard to the disappearance of the split rail fence, the issue was that the ordinance required no ability to back out of a parking space. Under the old configuration, you had back-to-back spaces So there were 4 spaces that had to back out into the easement. With the current configuration, everybody can back out into the aisleway in between the parking spaces. So the fence it's basically a non-issue, but we'd be happy to put it in if the planning commission felt it was necessary or would be an addition to the situation.
Okay. I think at this time, we can give you our comments back, but I don't think we're prepared to look at any site plans right here. We have a pretty full agenda, so I think we'd like to hold off on reviewing that. I mean, it's not, what we have is that what you're providing would be in addition to what we have in the packet. So,
So you're not willing to vote on the project tonight?
no, we have additional information that needs to be supplied to us, and we've not received it as part of the meeting packet. And it wouldn't be fair to everybody here in this room to receive something here and then stop and try to go through and have staff review it and so forth. I mean, they have to be cognizant of our agenda here.
Sure,
So,
I can appreciate that. I don't think that they're substantial items. I mean, I think that we were just addressing what we were asked to provide.
right, I understand, but we'd like to have them go through the proper channels. That's what we expect of all the applicants, and so that we can get it in a packet in a timely manner before we take action. So I don't know if anybody had comments regarding some of the changes. You had anything?
I just have a question. So the easement that goes into 31, is that going to be closed off to 31?
No, we're
Then?
not.
Oh, okay, so the pavement does go through still? So you could enter the property from 2 different curb cuts on there? Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because when I'm looking at this, I didn't see the pavement, so thank you so much for answering that, I appreciate it.
And I guess that's probably one of my concerns on it, and that's why there needs to be some type of a barrier there. I think one of the challenges of this site is it's very narrow, and I'm concerned having a 3-story building kind of squeezed in there. I think it can work, but I think it's important to have safe access in there. And if you don't have some direction to funnel people in the appropriate locations, there is the potential for them to block access through there. So if there's emergency apparatus that needs to get through there, it could have problems if people aren't parked, particularly in the winter months when people don't see the lines, and they could still pull into those off of that easement area. And I still think you should seriously consider about using that as your main access. It could have potentially opened up some more of that site.
We cannot use the easement as the main access because the fire marshal has dead set against it.
But that's because is there no access from the south?
The width of the easement, we can control to the property line of our property. After that, it is not wide enough to meet the requirements for the fire marshal.
To the south, then, is what you're saying? Okay, all right.
This is similar kind of to the first sketch plan, the parking area that you gave us way back when, right? When you had, that's.
It is, we just.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We just took out those 4 that
Yeah.
went back into the easement.
Yeah, okay. The only other question I had, when we did the landscaping plan, is there an escrow amount that was given on this
We've
one?
not received any amount. What we can do is we can require a performance guarantee
Yeah.
as a condition of approval,
Yeah.
unless you'd like to see that before. We're going to be looking at it next month, too, so if.
No, that would be fine.
Okay.
That would be fine. I didn't see it in an amount or whatever. I reviewed the new landscaping plan and that type of thing, so, yeah.
Is there any other comments, feedback? Did you-
Are there buffers? Well, I guess you can't really landscape too much around that dumpster. Yeah, I mean, you are putting a nice fence around it. It's just, yeah, I know it's tough. Thank you.
Is there a way that this can be reviewed and approved without coming back to the meeting again next month? That once you have
Well,
it, it can be approved next week?
Not really, I mean, it has to go through staff and then get into our packets and on our agenda. So we don't have any plans to take any action tonight. I mean, there's several items here that are listed that need to be addressed, so.
And they're significant enough to hold the project up another month. I'm sorry to be difficult. We're trying to.
Well, there's proper channels to go through, and that's to get the information to staff. Staff provides it to into our meeting packet, so we have time to review it instead of on the spot type of thing. So it's there for you to navigate it, and just like all the other applicants. So we won't there's no need to do any tabling or anything like that? Okay.
Yeah, no action at this meeting. We'll bring it back. Hopefully, we'll have, with that information, complete application for you.
Right. So I suggest working with staff to get those items addressed, and we'll have it on the next agenda.
We need a motion to postpone consideration.
Make a motion to postpone consideration of SPR 2-22, SLU 2-22, the Beachview Apartments.
Second.
Okay, motion to postpone consideration. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Okay, that motion carries. We do have, a next item on the agenda is the zoning amendment 1-22 combination of uses. And we do have a public hearing on this. This is a text amendment. Did you want to make any comments before we go to public hearing?
Yeah, I could just make, so Sarah was kind enough to format this into kind of a format that could be approved, recommended for approval by the Planning Commission and adopted as an amendment by the Township Board. So what's presented is what was reviewed at the last meeting, and so it's two different items. One is a change to the combination of uses, basically allowing all commercial and industrial districts to allow a combination of uses as a part of the site plan review. And then the other piece that this amendment is addressing is reducing the minimum gross living area in multifamily. So I wasn't part of the discussion when that was added on to the combination of uses. I think that it's reasonable to reduce the dwelling size for multifamily from the 576 down to 400. But I would like to take like a more holistic look at the dimensional requirements in all districts. I think that our single-family dwelling unit size can go down, and we've had a lot of requests for, kind of creative designs with, a pole barn and some dwelling living area. So I would like to take a look at the whole table when we update the zoning ordinance, but I think it's fine to adopt this if you support it as is, just so we can get the combination of uses moving. But just wanted to give you a heads up that we'll be looking at that whole table to update soon, so.
Can I ask you a question about section 402, the minimum? On our land use chart, our table, all those places that we reduced to 400 square feet, are those all on sewer and water?
Yes.
Okay, so that's.
Those are all multifamily then, so.
Right, and so that's my concern, is that we're the number one state for having the most septics and wells, and it's either we gotta get sewer and water out to these areas, or keep the growth where we can have adequate subsurface waste and clean water delivered to people without creating a lot of individual septic and wells. So I think that was one of the reasons that we went with the 400 in some districts and kept it in some of the other districts a little bit higher.
Right, but multifamily is only permitted in areas with sewer and water.
Right, okay, I just wanted to make sure, I was just,
And the single-family residences is limited to 768
Right.
in every district. So I
Okay.
think would be appropriate to reevaluate that
Okay.
at a later time.
Okay. Any other comments with staff before we open up the public hearing? Okay, we have a public hearing on zoning amendment 1-22, combination of uses. I'd like to open up the public hearing at 8:17. If anybody has any comments on this text amendment, please feel free to come to the podium. All right, why don't we close the public hearing at 8:18? And this is a zoning ordinance amendment, so it's a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the Town Board. I'd entertain any motion on this, or any discussion.
I'd make a motion to approve zoning amendment 1-22 as presented by staff, or as a recommendation to the Township Board of Approval.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. I'll second Dan's motion to recommend this to the Township Board for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Okay. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Our next point on agenda, I realize we have a couple of public hearings, and I know people are here for that, but we do have a scheduled break, so I can apologize, it's probably not the most convenient time, but we reconvene here at 8:30. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no inventory.
Okay, I'd like to reconvene the April 5th meeting of the East Bay Charter Township Planning Commission. We are on agenda item 9D, the site plan review 3-22 Alexandra Inn, public hearing, discussion, and possible action. Before we go to public hearing, did staff have any comments before we go?
So I just wanted to look up, I didn't see in the packet, but we did receive comments back from Wade Trim related to the proposal. I was just looking for it in the packet because I wanted to. Somewhere in there.
I put in there, remember what was in there?
Yeah, I don't see it. In the packet that's on. Okay. Okay. That's okay. I'll just go through mine and then I can hit on that real quick and the additional
Okay.
information. So, this is an application you kind of had an introduction to at your last meeting, so we're up to the public hearing. There has been some changes proposed to the site plan a little bit and to the building elevations, because that was one of the discussions at the last meeting was dealing in building height and where it's calculated to. So they did do a little bit of changes to the elevation drawings on the building, and there is a letter also in your packet from the attorney that talks about the height of the building and how it's calculated. So that issue, I do believe, is resolved for the height. We did receive fire department approval on it. There were a couple of items that are in your staff report that talk about being partially provided. Those include details on the retaining walls. You'll note on the site plan along the east and the west property lines, there's notes about retaining walls and guardrails where they're needed, depending on the site. And this has to do with, and this is in the Wade Trim review, they did want to make sure that the township understands that the development is raised 4 to 7 feet in elevation. Well, let me just read what he wrote here real quick. One thing that we would like to make sure the township understands is that this development proposes to raise the site 4 to 7 feet in elevation and proposes to have this elevation carry almost from the east property line to the west property line. Standing on one of the two adjacent sites and seeing cars above head level may not provide a safe feeling to the owners on either side. Overall, it feels like they're trying to pack too much on this small of a site. Everything, though, has been reviewed for stormwater. That was an outstanding issue last month, having to do with the basin, if it could be underground. That's all been worked out, so the stormwater is okay. Everything's good with them on that. So that's where that retaining wall and guardrail will come in along those property lines. There is details in the packet that was on your desk about what the guardrail and retaining wall will look like. Near the back of the packet, it's the fourth page from the end. One of the items I also mentioned is partially provided. It's on page 10 of 18 of my staff report. It looks like it's 191 maybe of the packet. Is parking space requirements. They are providing 34 spaces on here. There was some discussion at the last meeting about a parking waiver and reducing the number of spaces because housing would be offered nearby for employees. Upon review of the ordinance and right after the last meeting, we sent the applicant an email letting them know that that type of reduction is not allowed. It's specific to the access easement or connection to the neighboring property. If, in order to put that connection in, you need to reduce your parking to deal with that, then you can get a reduction. But on this specific site, that cross-access easement was not impacting the number of parking spaces. I say partially provided here because there's 32 rooms, and then that would leave enough for 2 employees. The applicant did provide some additional parking calculations at the back of that packet that's on your desk. They feel that 34 spaces is adequate, that they have 2 employees on site at a maximum shift. So they feel like that has been addressed with their information. The next item has to do with the dimensioning of the parking spaces. The ADA spaces are only 8 feet on the plan. Our ordinance doesn't delineate between ADA spaces and regular. They all are required to be 9 feet. So the last page in that packet talks about changing the parking space layout. It won't be an issue to deal with that for their plan. So I think with that additional information, that should kind of clear up any of the outstanding or partially satisfied criteria that were listed. This is only a site plan review, just to remember that. It's not a special use permit in your approval process. So if they meet all the requirements of the ordinance and all of the criteria, then this application must be approved.
Okay. I think before we go to the applicant, if we could just do the public hearing, so if there's other comments, and we can address that all together as discussion in addition to what staff has just said. So we'll open up the public hearing at 8:36. So if anybody has comments on the site plan review 3-22 at Alexandra Inn, if you have any comments, please come to the podium. I'm not seeing any comments, so we'll close the public hearing at 8:37. Doug, did you want to make any comments about the site plan?
I think we listened to everyone from the comments last meeting, especially according to the architecture, and it was little changes. You have no idea how long it took to figure that out and roof structure. And again, you know, it's in the ordinance. I know there's discussions about, you know, how to remedy some of these obscure things that are in the ordinance. But we worked really diligently hard, and actually, we created some asymmetry to the front facades, and actually limited ourselves with the roof deck to 49 people because there's only one access, stairway access, so that was purposeful on that. The retaining wall detail is in there. It was done by Angela Vosa at Avante Engineering. It is, and I think it's important to when you understand the site, it goes back to 1937. We were on there. The Points development actually has retaining walls that raised it to the suitable elevation that it needed to be at the stormwater when it was approved in the 90s. And actually, that is already 3 feet to 42 inches higher than our site. Jens Park didn't meet the stormwater ordinance. It's just a building, a little parking lot at the time that it was installed. So it didn't have to meet the ordinance that we have today. And that ordinance is, the elevation that you will see there is in straight compliance with all the other projects we've done since the ordinance has been adopted, that probably Baywatch 2. And I will beg you again to look at your stormwater ordinance. There are redundancies there, and I brought it up before and basically said, you know, well, it's fine, but I beg you to look at that ordinance. There are redundancies that are unnecessary, but we are meeting them. And that's what's causing us to raise the site. Someday, if the ordinance isn't changed, both projects on both sides will have to be raised the same amount. It's all due to the groundwater, and frankly, the entire bay front will have to be raised, some more, some less, but they all have to meet that same criteria, that same elevation that you see to meet that ordinance. And in my firm's review, it's unnecessary, and we'd be happy to be a part of that discussion. Other than that, we think we checked all the boxes. Finally, and I beg you, this parking thing with the ADA thing, that's a federal regulation that those spaces are laid out. There are 2 other projects on your table tonight that don't have that same comment. I will guarantee you, no other project in what I had to calculate my 39th year of being in this business ever has the ADA width being more than the federal allowance. We can make it work. It is totally unnecessary. Your ordinance does not speak to ADA. So if anything, change your ordinance instead of creating more hard space. The ADA already have an 8-foot space. These have to meet the van accessible, so there's an 8-foot aisle in between and another 8 feet. So it will cause you more heartache trying to comply with all these plans. And again, you've got 2 other reviews in front of you by the same department in the same township, different planners. Both of them do not pick out this issue. So please don't go to 9-foot handicap spaces. So that's all I have, and we're here with any questions or concerns. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So planning commissioners just got a lot of information here. Any comments, questions, concerns?
Could I have clarification on one item?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm looking at the ordinance when it talks about required conditions for all uses, and when it has building separation setback, says all buildings and structures shall be separated a minimum of 10 feet between each other, provided, however, in caps, for parcels between US 31 North and the Grand Traverse Bay, this minimum separation between buildings and structures shall be 30 feet. And shall be designated and arranged so that there's a clear view to the bay from the highway. What is the dimension? Are you 30 feet?
I'll say that in my experience, that has applied when buildings are on the same lot, when it's 2 buildings on one lot being developed, not the buildings adjacent to another owner. That's how that's been applied.
Okay.
And staff can.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted clarification on that, that's all.
Yeah.
I got caught up in that one too, Paul,
Yeah.
because I don't think that's what it says, but
I
I think the intent, and Mindy, you can help me now, the intent was to not build a wall along the view shed there. And as you can see, my gosh, what is that beach, another beach where they have the,
Grand Beach
yeah,
and Sugar
thank you.
Beach both have.
Where they have the, the connector that's glass and, so that was the intent of, I believe, of the ordinance, is not to create that wall from way back when. So, how does that apply?
well, it just doesn't say specifically on-site. So
Right.
when I initially reviewed it, I said it would, written, it would be to the neighboring building, which could be on an adjacent property, but my understanding is it's always been applied only on-site. So that's some language that could be cleared up in your zoning ordinance rewrite.
Okay.
But I think it's important to apply it the same way to everybody, so I can get behind that's how you've done it before. So there's one structure on the site, essentially that regulation doesn't apply at this time. Or it meets that requirement.
asterisk it.
Any other comments or questions?
I looked at the ADA thing, and I agree with Doug on that. It indicates on the government standards that if you do a 5-foot island, you're supposed to have a bigger space for a van accessibility, but he's doing 8, 8, and 8, and it said if you had an 8-foot aisle, they use the term aisle, sorry about that, aisle, then that would accommodate the van too. So, that's what the standards do say. I mean, I can vet that.
Well, I'm not arguing that that's
No.
the federal standard, and maybe the ordinance needs to say something different. It's just this ordinance says all parking spaces must be 9 feet, and it doesn't distinguish between the two.
Yeah, And I'll take responsibility for missing that on the Dairy Queen review and probably other ones. I've generally will look to see kind of what that width is and ensure that it's 9 feet, and hadn't looked closely at the ADA site. So I think it would be appropriate if you guys were comfortable just having administratively have us figure out with the applicant an appropriate interpretation of the ordinance and move forward with that, if that
Okay,
was.
can I say this, though? If it's 9 and 9 is 18, right? And you have to have a 5-foot island.
We don't have any, the East Bay Township doesn't have any specific ADA standards in the ordinance.
Right.
So it basically just says if it's, 90-degree parking, that it needs to be 9 feet in width. So
Okay.
you could interpret that with the island, the 8 feet plus the island could be, in excess of 9 feet, but we don't have anything specifically to ADA spaces.
On the charts, it showed, here's the point. 3 times 8 is 24, so 18 and 5 is less than 24, so he's really given us a little bit more, a foot or so. But, so, it's really bigger, and according to, what's on the web, it would accommodate it's the whole thing, the difference between a car and a van. So, with the 8-foot island, it would accommodate the van. So just FYI. I know you can work with them on that, but.
I think going forward, I think just as a suggestion, I would just kind of, I wouldn't try to address that through the ordinance, but just reference that it has to meet federal ADA requirements, and, because those can change, and those requirements from time to time could be altered, and so it's one of those that's really kind of out of our parameters, but I'm certain you guys will figure it out, so. Any other comments? Yeah.
I'm looking at page 231 of 331, 8B of the wage trim memo. In the very last sentence, a variance from the township would be needed for this to be allowed, and they're talking about the below-grade stormwater system.
So I talked with Brian Sousa about that. I think Damien had originally written that, and my understanding in talking with Brian is he was comfortable with the below-ground system so long as there was verification and reasoning behind it. He said it was really kind of a township policy decision. And so, my understanding is that these kind of more intensive parcels that are being developed along that corridor with limited space for the above-ground stormwater basins, that would be an appropriate reason for the stormwater as designed. The applicant submitted that letter from Atwell Mabi with justification for the stormwater system, and Wade Trim was satisfied with that.
Okay. My next question is regarding the placement of snow in the right-of-way with a 7-foot increase in height on the site. I think we have a site safety issue.
I think that the response was that this is going to be not a limited season hotel, and so it's not going to be used in the winter, and so I think the plan is for and the applicant can speak to that, but for snow storage to be in some of the existing parking spaces.
Well, I saw that, and I agree with that, except for what happens when there's a new owner. And that goes with the land and not with the project. And so I think we do have to have snow storage, and we have to talk about that, because what happens tomorrow, what happens in 7 years, we have to make sure that we have a plan for tomorrow, not just today. So I'm very concerned about the fact that there is no place for snow storage if we have an open, except for in the right-of-way where we already have 7 feet high, and we're going to put a snowbank on top of that. I think there's a real issue there.
I would agree with that. I had that on my list as well, because if it does change hands, it could become a 12-month operation, and with, with the increase in popularity of the area, there's easily could become a 12-month operation. Does the sign, I really like the looks of the sign that they designed. Does it meet our ordinance with the?
Yeah,
Okay,
the
good.
size and the height and everything does meet the ordinance.
Okay, the sides with the,
Yeah.
okay. It looks very nice.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
One question, how high or what's the height of this Widow's Walk?
I don't think that there is a dimension on that side of the building on any of the plans, but I might be mistaken. I'll defer to.
It's on that memo that you were given with all the different handwritten.
Yeah. The one that Petra sent, right?
I don't know where it is in the
Yeah,
packet.
I was looking for it too.
Now, the reason why I ask is that somewhere in here, and I can't find it, there was an issue about height, and if it's over a certain height, it cannot be used for people, individuals. Yeah. And I'm looking at and from what I see, the Widow's Walk is in excess of the 35 feet.
Yeah, the elevations are on their page 8-7, 8A of the site plan. They're near the back of the site plan drawings.
Yeah. I'm looking at our page 220. And it seems that at 3411, the Widow's Walk is higher than that.
I agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, I can't find the reference in the,
Does anyone else have concerns about that widow's wall?
Yeah.
The height?
I think it'd be good to have the right calculation if,
Yeah, and I had a conversation with our attorney, Brian Grant, just because I did want him to take kind of a holistic look at at all the building elevations. I sent him all the sections of the ordinance that related to height just to get kind of a very in-depth legal review of what was being proposed. He didn't have any concerns with that, but we didn't specifically talk about the Widow's Walk. I was looking at the elevator and wanting to make sure that shaft was not more than
Right.
the maximum percentage, and so we took a close look at that, as well as the definition of the roof line, so.
but you do know that, as I said, I can't find it where they do have this issue about if you do go over this height, you
Oh,
don't
what
have.
section is that in?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah,
It's
the height-
14.
That's in the section, it's
Page
5.
189 of your packet. But it's section 412G is in the ordinance. It talks about not exceed 50 feet provided that one or both side minimum yards are increased for every building additional height above the district maximum, which in this district, the maximum is 35 feet.
Correct. Yeah, I'm aware of that, but,
I think it's actually in the exceptions, it's in Article 5, Section 504, exceptions. That's the piece where it talks about the human habitation. I think that Paul is referring to.
And what does that say?
I need to find it.
Okay.
So it says, it's the structure, the permitted height exceptions for structural parentheses, don't know how to pronounce that, but when a given use is permitted in any district, the following kinds of structural shall be permitted to exceed the height limitations for authorized uses. So we identified the elevator to meet one of those exceptions. And then at the end of this, it says the foregoing permitted exceptions shall not be used for human occupancy. Is that, Paul? what
yeah,
you were-
yeah, that's what I'm referring to, yeah.
That Widow's Walk, according to this diagram, I'm looking at A.8. It exceeds that 3411 measurement. They're doing a lot of talking back there.
No, we're,
You rely on staff and attorney too.
Josh Werfel, 10387 Carey Road. We're referring back to the memo that came back from Young Graham and Welding, where he indicated that a structure having a roof supported by columns or walls for shelter support or enclosing of persons and animals are allowed within the ordinance, according to what's written in the statute.
Yeah, but he's not talking about, he's talking about that section, but he's not talking about that section.
I'm just referring, that's what we were referring to in the draft
Oh.
conversation.
And I did give him all those sections of the ordinance to review.
So I think that there's an issue there.
Yeah, I got it.
We can go ultimately to the interpretation of habitation then, because habitation is where somebody lives. And if you say your dwelling is just where somebody lives, so that term is in this too. Or, I mean, it'd just be nice to have, after several months, this thing worked out.
But what, on section 1409, where it defines height, I mean, in the back, means when referring to a tower or other structure, the distance measured from the finished grade of the parcel to the highest point on the tower or other structure, including the base pad and any antenna. It doesn't refer, I mean, I'm just reading what's in
That's what
here.
I'm happy you are.
Okay. It doesn't really indicate whether it's inhabited or not.
Well, I think it says human habitation, though, from what you had read.
It says human occupancy.
Okay? It
That's
wasn't
a
habitation.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Very
Oh, sorry.
different word.
Okay, so let's look up that one and see what occupancy is.
Well,
So there is another definition too of height, not to throw it, we'll just mix it all up for you, right?
yeah, thanks.
It's under building, comma, height of, and I think that's in Brian's letter too, but it says the vertical distance from the grade to the highest point of
Of the coping.
coping of the flat roof or the deck line of, and it talks about how you measure different roof lines there. So, Brian's conversation is all on the front elevation, facing the road and not necessarily every elevation of the building. And I don't know how you've dealt with that in the past, if you've had to experience this at all in the past or not, if it's been symmetrical, you've not ever had the different roof lines, maybe?
It's not a question of the roof line, it's a question of the occupancy on the
For that.
platform where people can walk.
For that 504, section 504
Yeah.
is the hangup.
For clarification, Mindy, you're asking in reference to 504, Section 2A2?
I am not, I'm sure
Because
I
that
don't
is,
have
that has been, that was reviewed underneath the attorney's letter. And according to him, he said that, in his opinion, that the proposed building complies with the zoning ordinances in reference to 504 2A2. So I can, and that's what we based our, when we did all of our rework, because we were here, and Sarah asked specifically in the last meeting in reference to the height of that deck level, and there was no voice there was no negative opinion in reference to that. And then after we received the letter from the attorney stating that 504 2A2 was reviewed, and according to his letter, that we met all the zoning requirements. So we can only go based on what your attorney has told us and what staff has told us in their review process.
I would just like to point out, this is not 5042A2. This is a sentence further down.
So no, I'm not referring to that section. I don't have it, I don't have
Yeah,
the zoning
after,
ordinance in front of me.
so 2A, there's 2A, 1, 2, 3, and then after 3, there's a standalone sentence that says the foregoing permitted exception shall not be used for human occupancy.
Occupancy.
Not habitation.
And
It probably needs a number 4 in front of it so that it doesn't get skipped. But
yeah, but occupancy is the word.
I can understand that.
And I did discuss that sentence with Brian, the foregoing permitted exception shall not be used for human occupancy. I made sure that he had seen that when I talked with him. And, but our focus was on the elevator, and they had, you know, the elevator was limited in size, and so we were able to, you know, take a look at the plan set and deduce that elevator was not used for human occupancy.
But you didn't talk to him specifically about the widow's walk in that sentence, correct?
That's correct.
Right.
You did talk to him about that sentence, so he was supposed to review that sentence.
Right.
And he's aware that there's this walkway or this area that will
I
occupy?
sent him the full plan set, and so we went through it together.
Right.
Well, I got an issue with it.
So the gist of the issue, Paul, and the Commissioner, is you can't have this at 35 feet unless the interpretation allows it, correct?
No, I'm saying it's in excess of 35 feet.
If the ordinance says that you don't have to have a floor that starts at 35 feet over, an area of occupancy.
Well, a floor or an area, yes.
Right, yeah. So, because I am asking for a little bit here, because we came into this meeting feeling that we had given everything, we had had it reviewed, we're paying for an attorney's review. So if nothing else, I'd like to come out of this with some kind of condition that it's okay as long as it meets the ordinance. Not that we have to go and change a couple lines on a piece of paper. And if we can't do that and make it work structurally or for some reason, then so be it. But I would really hate to press this issue for another month.
I don't understand what you're saying, Doug. A couple lines on a piece of paper. What does that mean to me?
Well, right now, I got 2 lines on a print. I don't have a dimension in front of me.
But we know that it exceeds
You don't.
3411.
Well, the line appears to make that so. So what I'm saying is, if that's the case, And maybe we need to get Brian, back on the phone, Graham, and say, is this how you're reading it? How you're interpreting this is, and if that's true, that we can't have this occupancy over 35 feet. So, then like a condition could be, you can't have an occupied level above 35 feet unless the attorney disagrees.
It says that in the ordinance already.
Well, you can, providing you bring the building in.
What do you mean?
The other proviso says that you
You
can
can
go
go
up
up
to
as
50,
you-
but you bring it in 2
setback.
feet for every
Yeah.
foot you go up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Right, there are provisos to go higher, but there are also regulations to follow on it.
It's just we've strictly tried to work with staff and council during this time, and everything in for review in a timely manner. This isn't, and this is, again, very good work on your part, sir. And I wish it had been covered better, so, with the amount of staff time and council's time and engineers' time that's gone into this thing, so. We have been in past, because I've been working in this corridor for, again, a long time, done a lot of weird things with roofs and heights and exemptions like that. I don't know of one that had a widow's walk, or a deck, to my knowledge.
None.
Yeah. So, I can get that, I guess if I can get that down to 34 feet, 11.99 inches. In your mind, am I good? If that was 34.999, would I be okay? And can that be a condition? So, that's what I'm saying.
So we have that item to resolve. What else do we have on the list? There's a few, is there anything else that we need to address or
I just
discuss?
had on the last page a couple of proposed conditions that talked about the ADA spaces need to be 9 feet to meet the zoning ordinance, or if you want to say, deal with staff to figure out what that should look like, whatever you'd like to do.
No, I think that's fine. I think that's just, I was talking about going in the future, like, we would probably require some type of amendment to the ordinance, is what I was referring to.
A maintenance agreement for the service drive to be recorded with the Register of Deeds, a performance guarantee for the landscaping prior to a land use permit, outside agency permits required prior to a land use permit. And then the two kind of outstanding issues I've heard discussed is the snow storage being in the right-of-way and with the elevation for if somebody else were to buy this or the operation were to change. And then that widow's walk, if you're comfortable with a condition or if you would like to see more information before making a decision.
I'm fine with making that a condition. I don't know what other people have, what their feelings are on that. I don't know what the feelings are of the planning commission here at this point.
Well, I sympathize with them because they did do everything they've been asked to do, and somehow something's gotten missed, or I don't know. So I personally feel it'd be, if we could recommend a condition that would satisfy the board, seems like that would be a good way to go, because they've,
Well, I think if there's an issue, it could be brought back. I mean,
Right.
but if it's okay and it works forward, or they can be adjusted to the satisfaction of staff, then that's fine, then just move it forward. But if there's something for some reason that requires a major alteration or something like that, then bring it back. But I'd be fine with it going forward with that additional review. Any other thoughts, comments?
So that's a condition that would say that it needs to address what Paul brought up, that section of the ordinance?
Right.
Okay.
and would the condition, what would it look like? Would it have to go back before the attorney and see?
I would leave it up to staff to kind of do that, make that judgment call and what's appropriate after that review with the attorney. And then, like I said, if for some reason it alters the design or something needs to change, then it'll have to be dealt with at that point. But if it's fine or whatever, then it moves forward.
If in working with the attorney, the design results in a lower elevation or dropping the widow's walk, I assume we wouldn't come back to the planning commission. That would be less than 10% change.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. I mean, I was thinking if it's for some substantial thing where it alters, I mean, that would be, I would be okay with that. I think it's reasonable.
What about snow storage?
Is there any way to, this is just one of my random questions as I learn. Is there any way to make it a condition if it were to change, like not change hands, but change to a 12-month all year? Can you make that a condition or not really?
No, because you need more land. Right, you've got parking requirements already, and you're gonna need snow storage somewhere.
Well, maybe they have to remove it from the site.
When
mean-
you give an approval, it stays with the land, so you can't change the approval based on the owner. I mean, you could put a restriction that operations can't occur during the snow season, and then they'd have to come back to amend.
That's what I'm saying. Can't we put something in there that says if it goes to an all year round, then, I mean, just something to cover, I understand what you're saying, because I totally agree with that, but is there a way, being they are going to be using it as a seasonal, to make it so that if somebody bought it in the future and wanted to make it a 12-month operation, that they would have to, it'd have to be handled somehow?
It sounds like to me that from MDOT's response that they're not going to allow snow storage in the green area beside it anyway. So it would be up to the applicant to figure out how to deal with it if,
Right.
in fact, they did go that way, right?
Right. If you have
But
a s-
MDOT can require you not to put it there, right? So you'd either have to truck it away or fill up parking spaces.
Well, I think they
Right.
said that you could put it there as long as it wasn't on the sidewalk or interfering.
Well, he said, if there's an issue, if there are issues, then in the future, MDOT will request that snow be kept on site. As long as it doesn't block the site distance of the sidewalk.
You're gonna be blocking site distance with just the height of.
So forgive me, so we're, it's 100 feet wide, 180 feet of parking lot. That's 18,000 square feet of parking lot, correct? And it's 10 feet for every 1,000? We're talking about 180 square feet. That's, a parking space is 180 square feet. I have a parking space worth of room on here. Here, it's 180 square feet. That's 9 by 20 is a parking spot. That's 180 square feet. That's the amount of snow storage we're talking about. And so, I'm going to say that I have that because I can still push it to the edge.
So why not say that instead of saying we're not open?
No. Werfel said it's not part of they're not, they are saying in their operation, but they're not, mandating that this only be a restricted time of year. That's their operation, that's what they project. But I agree with you, this does run with the land. But
The condition be that you delineate a space for.
up 180 square feet,
Site.
yeah.
I think that would probably be easiest. Okay. We can just make that as a condition. That'll be a provision for space.
And you want that outside of the road right of way? Is that what you're getting at, or?
Well, I think it would be good because be on site because you don't want it out by the road. It just ends up blocking view lines, so. All right, what's the,
Paul and Mindy, are you guys okay with that condition? I mean, I didn't really hear,
It meets the ordinance then.
pardon?
Meets the ordinance then.
Okay, just want to make sure that you didn't have further comment that I needed to hear.
You're talking about snow?
No, I'm also, I'm talking about the heights, the height issue.
Yeah, as long as you're following the ordinance, that's fine.
Okay.
That's
Just wanted to
what we're-
make sure, because I didn't have a good gauge.
All right,
You want a motion?
yes.
I'd make a motion to approve SPR 3-22 Alexander Inn with recommended staff conditions as well as the following. Feel free to chime in. Delineation upon the site plan or updated site plan of on-site snow storage in compliance with the minimum requirements for square footage of a parking lot for that size. Parking for ADA spaces will be in compliance with the zoning code.
Or,
Well, I was just gonna go with the standard zoning code, because that's what I've got to work with. And then, or you could say, well, we can talk about that, we'll just start with that. And max height would be in compliance with zoning code requirements for a building within this zoning code. The end.
and all these that were listed here, the performance guarantee?
Yeah, there's the other
Yes, and then.
three.
And then the additional recommendations per staff.
Would anybody be open to amending that the ADA parking be in?
Let's get a second, and then
All
we'll,
right, sorry about that.
then let's see if we got a valid motion.
I'll support.
Okay, now,
Okay, sorry.
all right, that's all right.
That they could work with staff on looking at the federal requirements and
Sounds good to me.
make adjustments accordingly.
Well, I think you made a really valid point about the way they have it is actually bigger. I mean, you're actually gaining a little bit for the ADA, correct?
I'll defer to you, yes, a foot. Foot is a foot.
I agree with you, but it's not uncommon for zoning codes to be more restrictive than federal regulations. So that's why I'm just saying,
Right.
I'm just playing the cards that we've been dealt.
Yeah, I get it.
Because I almost feel like if we do something like that, we're almost providing a variance to what our ordinance says. That's just my interpretation.
Well, there's nothing that says they have to reduce the island area just because they increase the space size. They can keep the same overall space, right? And have 9-foot wide parking spaces with whatever's left over as.
So maybe that's a staff interpretation you guys can work through as a
Yeah.
solution,
Yeah.
meaning a 9-foot wide parking.
Well, then if,
Impervious surface for this. There's an industry here that's in your construction code department at the county is gonna go. It's gonna go, what is this?
We'll get back to
can I just ask
discussion,
you
and
a
we'll,
question here? If you go 9 and 9 is 18, and then minus the, 24, so they'd have a 4-foot island then instead of a 5-foot, or are we still, we don't even, do we mention an aisle in our?
In the ordinance?
Yeah. So they could reduce it by 6 feet. Because they don't have to have that aisle.
But they do by federal law.
Okay, but federal law
I was
does.
just going to say, how do we avoid ADA?
Right, right.
That's a big deal.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm
So
willing to
what are
make
you
it
saying?
work. I'm willing to make it work. I
Okay.
just don't want to make stuff up on the fly.
right.
My only,
We're gonna make 1 million ADA spaces in this township non-conforming with this, because I'll guarantee you, this has never came up, and everyone follows ADA. With all the engineers in the industry, no one is making these spaces that big. So you just made 1 million spaces in all your parking lots non-conforming by not just saying that it'll follow federal guidelines, and I think your ordinance would say it's still subject to federal guidelines. I'm sure in there's someone that says that, so, but do whatever you want to do, we'll make it work, but this is not the right thing.
Dan, my
So,
recommendation,
so-
when you talked about building height, I would think you'd want to say that, that the permitted height exceptions will be following code.
I guess
think
I'm
that-
inferring that with just compliance with the zoning code for the district, because that would just wrap everything.
But the issue I see,
don't know.
the issue
I'm
I
happy to-
see is that we already have an attorney looking at the building height, and it's not the building height that's an issue. It's the occupancy on that Widow's Walk that is the issue. So I just want to make it very specific to you that occupancy on the Widow's Walk is the issue. I don't think there's an issue with regards to the height of the building or that, it's just that Widow's Walk.
I would agree.
So I have a proposed refinement of your condition.
Help me out.
And feel free to work with this. Consult with Township Attorney regarding Widow's Walk in Section 504. If not allowed as presented, Widow's Walk must be revised to be less than 35 feet.
How about it says comply with the ordinance instead of 35 feet?
Does anybody have any creative ones for the parking?
Well, for the ADA thing?
Yeah.
I would say I would just leave it as a condition of this, and staff will have to ensure that it requires, that it meets that requirements, and if there's some wiggle room there or whatever. At this point, I don't think we're going to figure out a solution on that.
Right.
I'd just rather move it forward. Staff will allow you guys to do the interpretation or whatever, just to move the project. And I would agree, I don't know if there may be some caveats in our ordinance that say that it can't, exceed federal requirements or something like that. I don't know. We entrust our staff to address that issue,
Agreed. Agreed.
I like it.
so.
Yeah, okay.
And then Dan, can I also offer to your amendment, because it meets the criteria of Section 820.7 of the zoning ordinance?
820, is that the site plan?
Site plan review.
Yes.
Criteria?
Yes. In compliance with.
Okay. Motion, second. We've had discussion. Any more last comments before we vote? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on to 9E, Site Plan Review 4-22, Special Land Use 3-22, Dairy Queen. We have public hearing, discussion, and possible action. So we were also handed out some 11 by 17s for those who might want to have a little bit bigger view for the site plan. And we were all out at the site earlier this evening, but let's just start staff comments on this before we go to the public hearing and so forth.
So, it's a Dairy Queen, it's a drive-through, so it's permitted through a special land use permit in the zoning ordinance. It's in the regional business district. It is a special land use permit, but it's, as you know, it's a use that's very similar with quite a few other uses along that corridor. You'll see quite a few drive-throughs. Overall, this application would result in an increase in total open space. They're looking to remove 9 trees and replanting 14. You'll see that the majority of the and I'm sure you saw it on the site when you visited today, the majority of the larger trees are being preserved around the perimeter. They've got some of the parking lot islands that are being preserved, as well as in the deck where there's some trees growing that will be preserved. They've got access connections both to the east and the west. They're preserving seating, bike racks, connection to the cart trail. In working with the applicant over the last month or so, they've been very responsive to the ordinance requirements. So the biggest issues that we found with staff review at the beginning was just the lighting requirements, the signage requirements, the illumination. So they've changed all of those designs and kind of gone away from what the standard Dairy Queen is to meet our ordinance. So they've lowered the sign height, they've reduced the amount of signage, they've changed the building facade and the lighting, they've removed all of the uplighting that was proposed on the building facade. So they also, I sent them an example of what Green Mitt did with the fence in the back and how they had the 6-foot white privacy fence and then had that offset for the cart entrance so that there would be blocking sound and noise for residents living behind there. So they added that into their site plan as well. So overall, I'd say the standards of the ordinance seem to be met. I don't really have any concerns with the proposal. They don't need a stormwater permit just because it's a redevelopment site and it's small enough and resulting in not an increase in a net increase in open space. And then there's also no MDOT permit needed. Grand Traverse Metro Fire has also reviewed and approved the plan. So from a staff perspective, I've got some conditions in there, but not any kind of outstanding concern.
Okay, why don't we open it up for the public hearing? It's 9:26. We'll open up the public hearing. If anybody has any comments, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address and make your comments.
Hello, my name is Brian Van Voorst. I'm at, where am I at? 3386, oh no, wait, that's the cottage. 3294 Holiday Village Road. I'm excited about the new Dairy Queen. I think that the engineer and the owner have made a beautiful plan. I appreciate the fact that they're adding 14 trees while only removing 9. If there's anything that we like up north, it's taking these vacant properties and turning them into actual commercial businesses again, and we also love ice cream. But a third thing that we really love is our up north character, and while I think that what they're putting forward here is very nice, I think that there might be an opportunity to save even more of the trees that are there. The heritage trees are really important to East Bay Township. They define our skyline. And in a recent survey, as you all know, the tree preservation was indicated as a very important aspect of what East Bay Township residents are really interested in. I recognize that preserving trees is a voluntary aspect to these designs that owners work with their engineers to do. But I think we also remember that there have been some recent opportunities with properties in which designs have been brought forth, and we've made some observations in which tiny little tweaks were able to preserve a few trees. And then the owners were able to accommodate that to everyone's greater good. When we have these beautiful heritage trees, but we take them out occasionally, new owners come in and they bring new plantings, but it takes us 50, 60, 80, 90 years to have those grow up into our skyline. After going to the site visit with everyone and talking with the engineer, I recognized an opportunity, I believe, that if a very small accommodation is made, 3 of the trees in the back can be saved. I don't know if am I allowed to pass out packets to you? I don't know.
Sure, that's fine.
I have 6 of these, and I'm afraid that's not enough for everybody, so if we can all share. What I'm showing is, I believe, what's page 280 of the design, and that shows some of the trees that are being eliminated. I think that 3 of them can be saved if on the second page, the stormwater drainage is simply moved slightly around where the trees are being removed. Again, I recognize that this is on a voluntary aspect on the fact of the owner and the engineer. So I hope that they may be able to embody the spirit of those that have come before them and make a small accommodation. I know that the residents of Traverse City of East Bay will enjoy having those trees join the skyline in a few years and become visible. I hope that if they are able to make that accommodation, that the commission will join the citizens in sharing their appreciation with the owners and making that accommodation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, not seeing anybody. So we will close the public hearing at 9:30 PM. The applicant want to come forward and talk about your proposal?
Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Cohen. The 1764 US 31 is the property. Basically, looking to move the current Dairy Queen location to the new location, to tear down the Ruby Tuesday and put in a drive-through Dairy Queen. Year-round business, and like he said, trying to save as many trees and aspects to the nature, access to the TART trail and nature stuff as we can. This is Chris, our engineer.
Hello. Like Claire said, I think we've gone through and taken care of most of the concerns that she had. I know we're hoping to get approval of the site plan, and then, with conditions as far as the interconnect access road, providing that to be recorded, and then also for the landscaping as far as the bond. But I know we had a few other comments. I'm not sure if, I guess we'll wait till the commissioners maybe bring them up and we can, kind of discuss them as we go along.
Sounds good. Thank you. Commissioners, any comments? Start on this side here. Mindy?
I don't have anything except for, what was your comment about changing the direction of the storm to save the trees?
I'll probably talk it over with Mike. It'd probably be required an additional drainage structure. The sketch that he showed me kind of showed it off to the edge. That's kind of our overflow that interconnect the two retention ponds. So it would probably require additional drainage structure to provide a PI would probably go through the trees. There's like a group of three and a group of three, and there's a light pole. So we'd probably remove the light pole and take the storm through there. But, I mean, we'll look at it and see what the costs are.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Carl, any thoughts?
No, I think it looks good. I'm glad that we're creating some more open space and what was basically a parking lot and ugly Ruby Tuesdays.
Only thing I've got for you, I think the plan's fine. I mean, I haven't seen anything that stands out to me negatively. My question is in that, this is just more philosophical for the group to consider, is just, we've got kind of a strewn of single-story buildings in like the highest, like, taxable value area of the community. And I like what you're doing, I appreciate it. You're the owner, I presume, or have a purchase agreement to close, dependent upon this. I just think of, like, what if you were a tenant in a bigger building? Same use, but add housing atop of you. Make more money off the land, more taxable value. You've got 1.5 acres, most of which is not used. So when I think about, like, what's the highest and best use of the site, I'm kind of taking a different approach. Like, if we were out in Townshipville and, like, out here, I'd be all about that and kind of keeping it as tight as you can. But in that space, which has public water and sewer infrastructure, everything we want to see happen, and then you see like a design that we had a couple doors down, literally, they're packing in housing to like the most narrow and tight little spot. If I'm in your shoes, I just think of like, what else could you do? And I know you're bringing a product to us that's in compliance technically, but just something for the board's consideration. If we were going to push growth, like this is where I'd push it, given what's going on there and the value of the land overall. Maybe this is good phase one, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think more could be done in this corridor, and if we're going to kind of direct and push different types of development, especially with the master plan coming up, like, that's something I would like to push harder, is to encourage people to do more on the site. Especially with the real estate being what it is, like, yeah. But I go to your ice cream store regularly now. I'm excited, we'll be able to get down there in the new location. I don't know what my kids are gonna do to Putt-Putt, but that's okay, I'll get past it.
You'll still get there, because you got.
Yeah, it's connected.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's getting there.
I'm just
We
throwing
made
that,
sure, we
I'm
made
just,
sure.
I'm just throwing a grenade out there as consideration when we're talking
Yeah.
about, like, what we want to do to control and push growth. Like, this is one of the things that we should consider. What, you're basically not using 2/3 of this site in a spot where we want to see more uses. I'm off.
Okay. Paul?
I think it's great. The only thing I want to clarify is that I thought we had talked about maybe moving those dumpsters, because I think that's where the entry is to the Todd Trail.
Right. So the owner and I kind of talked about that. What we'd probably prefer is to move the picnic area and bicycle racks over to the east, to the green area.
Okay, that's cool, as long as it's not by the
Yeah.
dumpsters. That's my only point. Other than that, it looks good.
So we'd still probably have a sidewalk that goes by the dumpster and then takes them.
But the picnic area is away from the dumpster
Right.
area. Right,
Yeah.
cool, thanks.
Renee?
I think that's a great idea. That makes sense. I love the idea, and I also really love the way Dan thinks, because obviously I'm in the housing industry, and so I think that's great. And you did the same thing on the one down, I'm drawing a
I
blank.
forget what the name of it was.
I know. Yeah, I know it starts with an S. It's late. But you did the same thing there, and I really like that you think outside the box like that, because I do think that, gosh, housing is just it's scary, guys. It's scary. There's just no inventory. So I think looking for ways to think outside the box. Obviously, it's not our goal to change an idea that came, but I like that you think like that. So I just wanted to say that I concur with that. But other than that, I think it's a great project, and I'm excited to see something active there versus all these vacant, non-active parcels that we have in East Bay. So I'm excited about that.
I think the next item on the agenda will help towards that.
Okay.
Towards,
Buy a house.
oh, yeah. Hey, we'll take them all. Still not enough.
The retention ponds, is it feasible to make those a little bit more bioswale type things with some native plantings or other? I mean, that's
So
just a
in our
thought.
landscape plan, we are proposing to landscape around it and put native.
More of a
grasses and stuff,
bioswale
right.
type thing rather than just a plain retention plant?
Right, we
Okay,
are.
all right, good. Yeah, because I was looking at that, and you'll work with Claire on the more native plantings rather than any invasives. That would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think their planting list.
Yeah, I have it. I did go through it. It looks pretty good, but I haven't, every single thing I didn't. But I know you work with them, and,
We'll take a look at it.
yeah, thank you. I think the other thing is, we wanted to look at the stacking of both when people are ordering, and then if the order isn't ready, because it does take a little bit longer sometimes to make a sundae, a blizzard versus swirl a cone. And I know that from old-time experience. So like if someone's, needs a place to go, I would recommend at least 2 or 3 of those. It looks like you have places for them to go. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
I think that was one of the comments that Claire had as far as the stacking and some of the issues as far as backup, and the prototypical Dairy Queen has basically one drive-through or one lane, and then a parking spot for one customer to pull off.
Yeah.
So we kind of looked at how Culver's does it and stacks it, in front of the store, so talking with the owner,
Okay.
we felt that that was plenty, with how their turnover is, they didn't think that they would need more than, 3 or 4 spots to
But
stack people.
I think Wade Trim or someone suggested 2, 1 isn't enough. Okay, well, where was, all right, well, maybe I misread that. But we should, we don't want, I'm talking about the end result. I mean, I think,
Yeah, I didn't see, I can go back to the engineering review, I didn't see
Okay.
any mention.
I don't know why.
of Stacking and the wave trim.
okay, so you have an order window, and then the window that hands you your food takes the money as well? Okay, so it's not like 2 different windows?
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Correct. That is the Dairy Queen prototype.
Yeah.
They don't like to do it. Even their huge grill and chills have one window for the most part.
Okay. I just would like to see something, like if your order's not ready, that we're not having a lot of backup there. And then the last one that I had is getting out to US 31. Are those, there's 1 lane coming in. Are there 2 lanes going out so that you can make a right and a left? Or just, because if my ice cream's melting and I want to make a left and someone's, I'm going to be backed up and it's all going to melt.
I think that width is wide enough to handle one entering and one exiting. It's not 3 wide.
Okay, so if someone's making a left, then that's going to be tough.
The scary left.
There's no way in heck I would do that. No offense, but my ice cream's going to melt
Yeah.
because I want to be making a right.
Well, you should have stopped and got out and had it in front of the building in the nice picnic area.
Yeah, right, thanks.
Yeah, why would you take it with you?
Yeah, just right, and die.
Because it's the middle of
In
January.
the summertime,
Yeah,
nobody
right,
should be
right.
making a left there, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, we either, I don't know, that's an MDOT thing, I think, or is it ours that we can say only a right turn out of there? Or make it 3.
I think with the green mitt, right, the planning commission kind of worked with the applicant to limit so I don't have much experience with traffic and with entrance and exit, so I would probably defer to MDOT in their review, and they didn't, have any comments on it, but I know that was, the planning commission did have some input, and I think there was a change made with green mitt on the exit based on safety and.
It could be a safety issue, just saying, because not everybody's going to know the back way out. So I just bring that up because I'd hate to, once there's an accident there, we know in the summer that it's backed up, and then your business, you don't get the business, or maybe you do get more business, I don't know. Just a thought, those are just a couple of my concerns, but thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
As far as my comments, I think it's a nice site plan. I like what Dan's thinking, but I also, at the same time, I like some green space, a little spot for people to breathe a little bit. I like the efforts to preserve any of those trees would be great. I do see you're planting 8 white pines. Maybe you could make it 9 for the ones that are being removed, just suggesting that. But I think you do have an opportunity here to kind of make for a great space for people to gather. I like the idea of maybe locating those picnic tables over there and making that really kind of a nice little park. I think it would draw a lot of people in. You get a lot of bikers on the TART trail. You're going to get a lot of visibility. You're going to get a lot of business.
You don't have enough picnic tables.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, seriously.
There is more room over in that area.
Yeah. But I think it has the potential to be a nice little break between all of the intense uses and fits for what a lot of people are looking for in terms of experience here in East Bay. So, yeah, I think you might want to double check on the stacking and stuff like that, just from our experience. knowing that we're getting a lot more, of all the drive-throughs that I've been dealing with lately, a lot of them are getting a lot more stacking than normal, and we don't see that changing at all. But it just makes for something, I think you got enough room there to work with it, so I'm not really too concerned about that, but anyways, I think that's good.
Do you own the other property where the existing building is, or do you lease that space?
Lease that space.
Got it, okay, so this will be your headquarters.
So did you correct the ADA parking space then on the, because it's 8 foot? Yeah, so you'll adjust it. Okay. We can put that in as a condition. Thank you. I know.
Any other comments by the planning commission? Anybody have a motion? Any thoughts?
How's our, any conditions or we have?
So there's the,
Go ahead.
so, sure.
I'll make a motion to approve SPR 4-22, SLU 3-22, Dairy Queen, with the conditions as set forth in Claire's memo dated March 29, 2022, conditions 1 through 5, adding a 6th condition that the parking spaces associated with the handicap spots are 9 foot.
I'll support.
Okay, we got a motion to approve with conditions. Any comments, further discussion?
Do you want to add any conditions on looking into the tree preservation and moving the picnic table, or just, I can just work with?
Yeah, I mean, it would be subject to staff a review of that. I think we're pretty fine with that. I don't know what thoughts are. Yeah, I think we've had enough discussion. I think they'll make some effort to address that. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? No? We're approved. Thank you. All right, finally, 9F, sketch plan review for a proposed hotel at 1050 US 31 North.
Hello, everyone.
Oh,
Chris Abbo, 251 East Merrill Street, Birmingham, Michigan, 48009. Thank you. We're last, and I know this has been a long one for everyone. I didn't think it would be this long, but thank you for taking the time this evening to allow us to give you a brief overview of our project. The hotel we're planning is a 5-story, 140-unit Hyatt House. Hyatt House is an extended stay brand with Hyatt Worldwide, and it's designed for extended stay travelers. You may be familiar with some recent projects that are coming into the market that are also extended stay. The brand was introduced by Hyatt in 2011. They currently have 126 locations worldwide. So the guest rooms that we will incorporate here at the Hyatt House are modern-style apartment units with fully equipped kitchens. We're also going to be proposing an attached restaurant with a second-story wraparound patio that'll also include a coffee shop to be determined. Approximately 4,100 square feet. At this time, the amenities will include an indoor-outdoor pool, fitness room, a lounge inside of a bigger, spacious lobby, complimentary breakfast, and we're looking to incorporate larger meeting space that can flow inside and outside of the restaurant. So Hyatt House is typically an extended stay brand, but what the brand is allowing us to do here is create a hybrid model, more of a full service, so that we can accommodate larger group, leisure, and even corporate group. And the kitchen inside of the hotel will be operated by owner-operator, which will be the franchisees ourselves, and we'll be bringing in a restaurateur to help us operate the restaurant, hopefully. And So right now, Scott, I don't know if you want to show the renderings. It's currently proposed at a 5-story building. And we've gone through several meetings with the brand that has been vetted out through the brand, and also with Scott and Chris, just to make sure it vets out and fits. And so basically what we want to do today is allow Scott and Chris to get some feedback, looking forward to your feedback on conceptually what we're trying to do here.
Great. Scott Bowers, and I know it's late, so I'm going to keep it, I was going to plan on a half hour, but a couple of minutes will be okay. Essentially, we did have a good meeting up here a while ago, discussed our site plan, and we made some corrections to go along with Claire's review. This is the site plan. This is US 31 right here. The restaurant sticks out in front. What we were trying to do is get the building as close to 31 as we could, but still allowing parking up front for quick access to the restaurant and not just the hotel. We have allowed for a circular pattern all the way around the site using the existing driveways that are on the site right now. We did make an allowance for connectivity to the neighboring sites. We have reached out to the state, and they're not very keen, I guess, on having us allow other travelers through that site because it is a campground and they're beyond their pay point would be an issue. We are planting our retention area in the back. Right now, there's only a few scrub trees. I think there's one major tree, am I right, Chris? The cottonwood. So we're looking at possibly saving that one. So everybody should be happy. We do have an outdoor area out front. There is a lower patio and an upper patio of the restaurant on the second floor. We've had positions for our dumpster and our loading areas to feed the restaurant as well as the hotel. We're keeping as much green space as we can. I think we're at 30% landscape space. We do have an indoor pool. We're looking at putting a green roof on the indoor pool. Something better to look at for the rear of the hotel. The front of the hotel is, it faces the lake, does have balconies. In this picture, you can see it's 5 stories. This piece is the only piece that goes up to the 74 feet. It's kind of an icon tower for Hyatt House. This piece sits out in front of the hotel. It is connected to the hotel, but it is the restaurant piece, and as you can see, the upper seating area for the restaurant. Again, balconies facing the lake. We're pretty excited about this. Hyatt's pretty excited about this. So we're ramping up very fast to come back in front of you with a full site plan application. So today we're just really trying to look for feedback or any things that you see that we could improve upon or that we're just missing. Or if you like it.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody want to lead off with any comments or thoughts?
Yay, another restaurant.
Anybody?
Looks beautiful to me.
Will you have banquet space that's affiliated with the operations?
Yeah, we do have space.
Is that dealt into the restaurant itself or separate?
No, it's separate. We're looking at actually having private dining space in the restaurant, but if you saw on your plan the pools, I put this upside down. The restaurant is here, and then we have the gathering space or meeting space or banquet space back here, which we do have a feeder from the kitchen to these gathering spaces.
I think I'm like 300 person
Not quite that large. It depends on how we sit them.
Okay.
But all the walls open up and it's one big, large space.
Got it.
It's also easy access to our lobby. Our lobby has an open bar, very similar to Indigo.
Is this also part of the Hyatt timeshare? So could people use their timeshares to,
The Hyatt timeshare is the Hyatt Residence,
yeah,
and, or Hyatt Residence Club, and no, it's not.
okay, all right.
We actually looked into that because they look at this market as a really sought-after leisure market. But no, it's not the timeshare.
Okay.
What would you anticipate is the average length of stay?
Well, I'm starting to learn this market a lot more,
Mhm.
and between the months of May and September, we would probably see 7-day stay averages.
Okay.
That's typically what the brand sees,
Okay.
7 days, but, no, I'm sorry, I'll take that back. That would be the least amount. So the room mix the room types are dens and studios. So the dens would be more for the short-term stays, and then the studios would be more for the long-term stays. So they could be 30 to 60 days even.
Okay, well,
So that's why this particular brand was chosen by our group, because it has larger apartment-style units. So we actually are just trying to cater to the longer-term stays.
And those studios are 300 square foot, 350 square foot?
Closer to 400 on some of them.
Oh,
So
really?
what we did, Scott, I don't know if you want to explain that, we pushed the building out a little bit, made it a little girthier to add 5 feet. So we could put 2 beds rather than 1, and then there's a private or separate bedroom, and the kitchen space has its own, separate kitchen space. So just like a regular apartment, normally you see a hotel where everything is open, or even extended stay hotels where the kitchen and the bed kind of can look at each other. And a lot of these rooms will have the den, have an adjoining room door to a bigger studio. So a family like mine, we come up here often, twice a year, and we stay a lot. A lot of times we rent out the whole floor of the Cherry Tree. And we like the larger units, and what we were missing is just kitchen or microwave and refrigerator. So the way we've incorporated the king dens, that would adjoin to a larger queen. So a door would open, so you could sell that, as most likely it will be a package, 2 rooms in 1.
Gotcha, thank you.
You explained that well.
Anybody else got any comments or thoughts?
So I have a question. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the site plan or anything else, but the two rooms in one, is there a door between them, or do you have to go outside?
No, there's an adjoining room door in between them.
It probably doesn't always show up on the site plan because we imported those as an extra computer thing.
Okay.
But in-
Either that or I can't see it because I
No,
can't
I
see
couldn't
it
see it.
anymore.
No, there are adjoining, and we've been working closely with Hyatt because they have their definite standards that they want us to work with.
We have these arrows right here that will show where they are adjoining.
Yeah. But we've increased the size of the rooms themselves for queens to allow extra room. Really interesting on this building, and Chris will probably hit me later for it, is that it's not a box, it's got a lot of undulation. If you look at the floor plans, they go in and out.
Oh, you need to, if you talk, sir, you need to come to the microphone because we're being recorded.
Okay.
So, sorry.
This building's just not a box, it's got a lot of undulation into it. We've projected out the queen rooms to give them more room, and those will actually go outside that rectangle. So it'll be a very interesting building.
Just food for thought, you said Birmingham, but you might take into consideration communication with Beta as well, the local transportation company that services that whole corridor. Just because it's such a high-profile site, I mean, there is your neighbor to the west, they offer airport shuttles just themselves via van, and I'm sure that'll probably be a service that you offer as well, but you might just extend an olive branch to them because they have bus stops throughout that corridor that are used a lot by their guests, especially if they're going to be there for longer than a week. And just as a food for thought, they've got some pretty low scale, cheaper, quicker, faster type of bus stops right now. So if you were looking to do anything, it's nothing that we require, but it just might be something to consider it's just something that we've been talking about more and more in our beach corridor area.
It's a great idea.
And I bet they would love the opportunity to just at least offer you a glimpse into what they're planning for that corridor. So before you go, spending a bunch of money on just cars, maybe look at it from a bus standpoint as well,
Sounds good.
from accessibility.
Do you think you have pretty good sound mitigation, like for the outdoor patio? Because it's pretty noisy along there, and I know you have the glass.
So the outdoor patio, I'm not worried about the noise itself for those people.
I meant the eating, I'm sorry.
The eating and stuff, yeah, we actually will have a sound engineer. We do quite a few hotels, and they're on highways and along 75, and so we've gotten accustomed to the 3-pane glass and things like that.
Good.
What's the estimated completion of a project like this?
I think Chris wants to open it up in spring of '24.
Okay.
That'd be a very aggressive move. So not assuming that the site plan approval will be a slam dunk, but we're at parallel path proceeding with design and introducing a construction manager to do pre-con and consult with us as we design so we can get real-time pricing as we go. That's kind of the uncertainty in the market right now, and blinders on and moving forward. Be ready to put a shovel in the ground, fingers crossed, by the fall, so that we can get a lot of underground infrastructure in. And we'd like to go vertical in '23 and do a lot of hard work in '23. Finish off in the spring of '24. Really, this can become a successful project for our group if we act aggressively. And I know that there are other projects planned in the market, and there's been hesitation, but we have no hesitation whatsoever. We're very excited.
You have a different product.
I'm sorry?
You have a different product.
Yeah, the brand is very unique, and they're selective on what locations. They don't look for aggressive growth around the nation, around the globe. They're really looking selectively to be in certain markets. And they were, it was between Marriott's and Hilton, and there was a lot of internal debate, and we had to do a lot of quick study when we closed on the property in November, December. And we talked to all the VPs on all the brands. And what we're looking to do here is, I guess I'll say be more upscale, because we want to lead the market in rate. We're not on the water. We're not going to pretend to be the resorts on the water. They're unique, they're special, and they cater to a certain traveler. What we want is we want to be very diverse with our consumer base. We want to have a good mix of leisure and corporate, if we can, and we're noticing a lot of influx in corporate group. We're seeing a lot of corporate group right now. And so a 140-unit hotel could accommodate larger groups like that. So if Traverse City and East Bay Township is looking to bring in larger conventions or larger groups, they would be scattered along, pardon this, but older, tired properties. So we're looking to just get a little bit more modern with this building, and we'll definitely do that and be very versatile to cater to group leisure or group corporate.
That's why I was asking the size. There's only one property in this region that can handle big groups.
The Belmar,
No.
it's all Grand Traverse.
There you go. And that's why I was curious, because you have space.
Yeah, and we actually pulled out some rooms so that we can bring in a larger meeting space. And then we can see the restaurant being more of a flex spot where we would close it down for private parties, because we've seen success in doing that. There's going to be, we'd have to judge and see where the peak and demands would be. But Scott, I don't know if you talked about the second story. Yeah, so that is added private space where we could have probably 120 out there.
They can't, again, we're on.
I am sorry.
Yeah.
Probably a little less than 120 upstairs. What I did want to say about this hotel and Chris's group is that they try to remain very flexible, and they realize that, just like in retail, over a certain period of time, you have to update and change, and people change. Just every decade, people change. So our spaces are designed so they're openable, they're flexible, they're changeable. It's done mostly with seating and groupings and things like that, instead of just compartmentalize the building. So that we can flow into the restaurant. The restaurant can be a big group meeting space, as well as the lobby, as well as our meeting rooms. And they have direct access to the outside, back in the back by the pools. There's another patio back there, as well as patios off to the side of our building, up in front. Outdoor areas will be up here and back here.
Looks good to me. I think it's definitely a lot better than what we had a proposal that was approved a few years ago on that exact same site. I think this is definitely an improvement. I think it's a nice piece of property. It's by the 31, so it is a little bit busy right there, a little noisy, but I think with you're abutting the state park property is going to make it really kind of frame it really well. And I definitely haven't seen anything like this in Traverse City, particularly all, new construction. I don't think we've had anything. The typical hotels that we're getting in are those kind of rectangled ones. So I like the variety here. I like the restaurant, I think, is really cool because it gives a certain look to it that is, it's inviting, it's unique, it takes advantage of the view of the bay, and it's nice to have a property like this that it offers something a little bit different than what we've normally been seeing. So I think it's an area planned for regional business, and it just seems like it's a good fit. The site plan, just kind of generally layout, looks like it works very well. One of the issues we had when the previous hotel on this site was farther back, and we're trying to get it closer, and, I think this is definitely a step in the right direction, so it's more visible, but also then that you take in the views of the bay as well, so it looks pretty good to me, so I'm excited to see the site plan come in front of us.
You want to put a cocktail lounge on the top so we can watch the airplanes coming in and out? That'd be cool, too. I mean, I'm not kidding.
Oh, watch that 35-foot one.
I was just going to say, make sure it's 34 feet, 11 inches.
I was ready.
We're brutal.
But we settled for the second-story patio.
You got the state park across the street. You should be okay.
Right.
Still good views on the views of the water.
Gotta try.
Any other comments, feedback for them? Okay, so at this point, this is just discussion, talking about it, they've come back with a formal application and go through the process. Would this just be special use permit, or would it be just site plan review?
Yeah.
Okay.
By right.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. We'll move on then. Item 10. Oh, yes, thank you. Item 10 is public comment. If anybody has any public comment, more than welcome to come to the podium. Not seeing any updates from planning commissioners. We have our next meeting on May 3rd, 2022. Any updates? Okay.
Did you?
I'm sorry,
Did you say public comment?
Oh, yeah, I didn't, but if you got public comment,
I do, yeah.
come on up.
Yeah, I do.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Blew right by you.
John Reed, 601 Carlisle. Those of you, there's some people in the room here that know who I am. And I'm here to talk, I'll use all 3 minutes if I can. I'm here to talk about my concerns with the decisions that were made today on the board. I'm 1,751 feet per Google Earth away from Sue Raymond's property line. I don't know if you guys can comment or not, or raise your hand or not, but has anybody on the board actually went out and stepped foot in front of her barn by chance?
Yeah, actually, we did a site visit, but
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
we're just going to listen to your comments,
Yeah,
though,
so
but yeah.
the thing about that is, it's in a hole, right? And just to let you know, I've done some sound study stuff. I was in the military, and one of my positions is I used to have to do sound, and it goes down, it falls. It's similar to water, right? The sound wave is similar to water. It's liquid, and it falls. She has support from many neighbors. I have utmost support. She spent thousands of dollars to come in here and literally got nitpicked to death. You can't ask for a better wedding venue in East Bay Township than that. Not only is it in a hole to keep the sound away, but it's literally at the corner of a Class A highway. There is no other driveway, granted if you head to the east. But if they're going to 3 Mile Road, she's on the corner of 3 Mile Road. How could you ask for a better spot to have a wedding? The people that wrote the letter that complained in our town, they don't own property there. They own a vacant lot next door. And they sound out a nasty gram to try to drum up some bad support. There's a lot of things that I see. I'm a 4th generation member of East Bay Township, and there's a 5th generation at my house right now that's 13 years old. I'm proud of where I live. And there's some things on this board today that I saw that I was extremely disappointed with, that I will make sure that I come down here on the second Tuesday of the month and voice my opinion. I'd appreciate if people came more prepared. I really am thankful in Paul Gonzalez, I'm thankful in Dan, I'm thankful in Carl. There's a lot of ayes and we's, there's a lot of opinions. You guys don't have an opinion. Your job is to vote for us to uphold the township charter. It's not about, I think the noise, I think. That's not your job. Your job is to give people the rules and make sure they follow them. And if they don't approve it. But if they do follow them, approve it. So with that being said, I believe Mrs. Raymond is going to continue to push. And I think you guys should reconsider that, really. The barn thing is a great thing. It's popular. We all know that. But with that being said, do your due diligence and make sure that it's proper. But know that there were a bunch of people here today that are true neighbors of her, that live a lot closer than I do, that were here for support. We didn't know we couldn't give public comment. Hence why I've been here for almost 4 hours to wait. So I appreciate you guys is what you do, but just know that people are watching, and we take note. We're community members, but we ask that you guys vote for, what I'm trying to say is take the opinion out of the problem. All right, you have concerns, I get it. Obviously, thank you for bringing up the Chick-fil-A thing. That's a huge pet peeve of mine, of people being on the road with drive-throughs. It's a bad deal. People parking on a U.S. highway to go in and get a cheeseburger. It's not good, right? So I appreciate you for bringing that up. Culver's, obviously, during COVID was a big problem, and it's illegal to park on the side of the road, and specifically to wait for a cheeseburger. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a huge deal with traffic flow. So my name is John Reed, and you'll be seeing more of me. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so I don't miss any other public comment. Okay. And just FYI, we did have a public hearing on that special use permit. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, any other comments? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.